Hey now, good Wednesday afternoon. Welcome into another rousing edition of 580 Sports Talk. Brenton Dworzinski, Dan Lucero joining you from now for the next 3 hours up until 6 o'clock. We'll lead you into the Royals series finale with the Cincinnati Reds tonight following a little overtime. We'll talk plenty of Royals baseball coming up this hour as well. Congratulations to the Kansas City Royals. They have done something no one else has been able to do all year, Dan. They have surpassed the Oakland Athletics for the worst record in Major League Baseball. Several teams have been tied with them through like the first 2 games of the season, but no one for months now has been worse than the Oakland A's until last night when the Royals, for the second night in a row, lost 5-4 to the Cincinnati Reds. The A's on reverse boycott night at the Oakland Coliseum knocked off the best team in baseball, the Tampa Bay Rays, again. And now the Royals own the worst record in all of Major League Baseball. We're going to talk about that. We're going to get to some stats from Jesse Newell, our good pal, who generally covers the Kansas City Chiefs for the Kansas City Star, but had some notes on the Royals and the fact that they are unconscionably unclutch this year. We'll touch on those numbers. Know that Jake and Fulton did a little bit too. We've got our take on those stats coming up here in just a second. Also, we're going to have to get creative to fix this Royals team, to find some way to spark them offensively, maybe defensively, maybe just in the clubhouse, in the dugout, on the mound, whatever it might be. So Dan and I have a couple of relatively creative ways to try to create some sort of spark for this Royals team. We'll get to that later on this hour. Plus, this week's edition of One Gotta Go coming up in just about 20 minutes. Also coming up today, a lot of college football, a lot of college sports in general to get to in the 4 o'clock hour. Phil Steele, whose magazine is the holy grail of all things college football previews. That's coming out a little bit later on this month, early next month. But he revealed his all-conference Big 12, all Big 12 football teams, offense, defense, first, second, third teams earlier this week. 13 K-Staters made all-league teams in the Phil Steele book. 12 players from KU. We're going to do a little positional breakdown. Which program, KU or K-State, has the better quarterbacks or running backs or defensive backs or linebackers, etc. We're going to go down the list. Who's got the actual advantage as we head into fall camp for the 2023 season. Tim Fitzgerald will stop by on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline, bottom of the 4 o'clock hour for this week's Azura Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up. We've got today's 580 Sports Talk headlines. We'll preview Royals, Reds, what is wrong with you, all that coming up over the next 3 hours right here on 580 Sports Talk. Of course, your texts are welcome as well. Text line number is 785-272-9429. And the YouTube comment section wide open as well. YouTube channel's called Sports on 580 WIBW. Comment section's open, so stop on in. You can watch the video version of the show for the entire time we are on the air today. How is full day number 2 of your team being the NBA champions feeling?
I did rewatch the game last night.
I saw you mention that on Twitter.
Yeah, I did. I fired it up on the ESPN app and watched. I watched the whole fourth quarter. I skipped around a little bit. The first 3 quarters weren't maybe as much fun, but I did. I watched the entire fourth quarter again and some of the post-game stuff again. And I still have so many articles, podcasts, things that I need to catch up on. So, still riding the high. And because there was no basketball game last night, and because the incredibly boring NHL playoffs came to an incredibly boring end last night, I got to catch up a little bit with the old boys in blue and watch the last 3 innings of last night's game. Was out to dinner and doing some other stuff, and then caught the last 3 innings. And if anybody would like to blame me for last night, I turned it on right when the Royals loaded the bases with 1 out in the 7th. So what I saw was Lucas Sims strike out Nick Pratto looking, and strike out Salvador Perez swinging. Beat them both with fastballs, well-located fastballs. And saw the Royals go pretty meekly in the 8th and the 9th and lose another 1-run game and go to 0-14 in Jordan Lyles starts, which is truly staggering. Although, again, Lyles gave up the 5 in the 2nd inning. He took the loss, and that's bad. I'm not trying to say it's not, but he did do the bullpen a favor last night. I'll give him a little credit where it's due. He stayed in the ball game. I think he retired 11 straight, or maybe it got to like 14 straight, or 14 to 15 at one point it was, and gave the bullpen a little bit of a respite a bullpen that sorely needs a respite.
Yeah,
got a little bit of one last night, and Lyles did that and allowed the game to stay a little bit competitive. So not a hard luck loser. You're not a hard luck loser when you give up 5, but did him a little bit of a solid last night. At least met part of his job description, which was pitch innings.
I've got a little Royals-related good, bad, and ugly for you. Normally, we recap a busy weekend in the sports world or in our personal lives on Mondays with the good, the bad, and the ugly. I've got a good, bad, and ugly for the Royals for you. Your good for today, and this is purely Schadenfreude, the ability to feel pleasure from the pain of others. A lot of people in baseball, a lot of people in this room, including myself, who roots for the Chicago Cubs, a lot of people who live in the greater Kansas City area or Kansas City fandom, dislike the St. Louis Cardinals. They share a state with the Royals. They are, in a lot of ways, quite unlikable, have been for a long time, the whole best fans in baseball thing. They now have the 3rd worst record in baseball as of today because they lost to the New York Giants. They were up 5-3 in the 9th inning.
San Francisco Giants.
Yes, the San Francisco Giants.
Yeah. That move happened in the 50s.
A long time ago.
Yeah.
The St. Louis Cardinals were leading 5-3 in the 9th inning today.
Yes, they were.
They lost 8-5.
Yeah, they had 2 outs and 2 strikes in the 9th inning, and their closer Gallegos gave up a 2-run home run to Mike Yastrzemski. I don't know if you did you watch the video of it? The sound the crowd at Busch Stadium makes. Mm-hmm. I would like to somehow inject that into my veins.
I want the same for Chip Carey's call on the Cardinals TV broadcast, where he just goes, I don't believe it. Brother, how do you not believe this? The team has sucked all year. So that is the good, that you can take a little bit of pleasure in the fact that a team that you very possibly dislike, maybe even hate, is miserable. And they are a disappointing kind of miserable, which really twists the knife. There's your good. Here's your bad. Jordan Lyles is now tied for the modern era record. That's 1901 to today. The modern era record for number of winless starts to begin a season. Number of winless starts to begin a season. That is incredible. That is truly, truly incredible. 14 in a row. He is 0-11. They have lost all 14 of his starts. There's your bad. Here is your ugly. And I mentioned this at the very top of the show. The Kansas City Royals now have the worst record in all of baseball. At 18-49, they've actually played 2 fewer games than the A's have this year. With a record of 18-49, they are now, by percentage points and by win total, worse than the Oakland Athletics this year, who have won 7 games in a row. They've beaten the best team in baseball each of the last 2 days.
Back-to-back nights.
Including, did you get to see any of the clips of last night's A's game?
Yes.
It was amazing how loud they got.
Yes, they were in harmony. Many of them wearing the Kelly Green shirts with the word "sell" on them, very visible throughout the ballpark all night, chanting "sell the team" in unison. It was a great show of support. Mm-hmm. And if you try to read about it on MLB.com today, or if you were listening to the A's broadcast, the story is, boy, sure were a lot of people here tonight. It was great to see so many A's fans out at the ballpark and inspiring the home team onto their 7th straight win. Nothing about the why they might have been there or what they might have been yelled about. And I get it. Like, if you're employed by the Oakland Athletics, you probably don't want to make too much about it. Like, I'm to an extent forgiving of the TV radio crews for the Athletics. But like, you go to MLB.com and read about that game, and the story is A's win 7th in a row in front of big crowds, surprisingly big crowd. Like, come on, man.
Yeah, that's pretty embarrassing. But as our pal on YouTube, Mark, puts it, the Royals aren't bad, just pathetic. 18-49. That's where they are. That is the worst record in all of baseball. We're going to get to these clutch stats in a moment, but I did not think we would get to this point this year. I did not think this team was going to be good. I thought they were going to flirt with 100 losses this year. June 14th, worst team in Major League Baseball. Not something I thought we would get to this season. But while the worst roster in baseball, the A's, are surging, and who knows how long that'll last. They might very well lose 7 in a row once this winning streak comes to an end. They are very bad as well. The Royals have not had any stretch like that all year. Not even a stretch where you can give yourself fake confidence. Like, oh, maybe they got something cooking here. No, they haven't had a stretch like that all year. They've never won more than 2 games the entire season. If you want to go by the Major League rules, the movie Major League rules, they don't even have a real winning streak this year. That's pathetic. It is. Mark is right. That's all it is. It is sad. It is embarrassing. And it just sucks. Like, it sucks to be someone who is it sucks to follow this team because it is so bad. I've said this before. I genuinely feel for you if you love the Kansas City Royals. Like, I know we make fun of Fulton because he gets so into it and he cares to a point that, like, you worry a little bit about his mental health.
And because he's a good sport, because if he weren't, we'd have to lay off of him by this point.
But if you love this team and you care about Royals baseball and you look forward to spring training and you look forward to the dog days of summer because it's all about baseball. And under normal circumstances, I like basketball, I like hockey, I like football. But now that the NBA finals are done, the Stanley Cup final is done, training camp isn't for another couple months, like, this is my time of year because it's baseball. It's everything baseball. And I'm going to go to the K a bunch and I'm going to listen on the Royals radio network. And I can't wait for the guys to talk about it on 580 Sports Talk tomorrow. This sucks. And I feel for you. I genuinely feel for you.
Yeah, it's no fun being worse at this stage of the season. I mean, we're into mid-June, 2.5 months in, and you're a game worse than a team that was built intentionally to be one of the worst teams in baseball history. And you're pacing now worse than that. And I guess the thing that makes it even more frustrating is there's not an easy villain here. Like, it would be one thing, like, if the Royals were built to be this bad and they were this bad, if they were supposed to be this bad, because they're not. They were not built with the idea that they were going to lose. What are they on pace for? 119 losses now. Yeah. If they were built to be this, like the A's are built to be this, then yes, point the finger at ownership. You point the finger at John Sherman. You point the finger at the people writing the checks, and say you're cheap and you don't care and you're wasting the summer. And they are an easy villain, like the A's owners are easy villains in that case. Or if you have a longtime general manager in the chair who continues to bungle roster construction, then you could point your finger and say, Dayton Moore, this is on you. You built this. You're responsible for this. Your failed drafts, your failed free agent signings. And if you had a longtime manager in the dugout, you could say, this is on you, Mike Matheny, because your lineup stinks and you're not putting guys in position to win and you don't manage the bullpen worth a darn. And like, you'd have some evidence, some long-term evidence to back up your disdain. And those guys would be really convenient villains. But right now you've got a first-year general manager and a first-year manager and a relatively new ownership group. And they did not go into this season. Now, obviously, giving 2 years and $17 million to Jordan Lyles was not a great idea at the time, and it looks so much worse now than it did back when they did it in December. So I am not saying these guys deserve high marks. Do not get me wrong. But they are not easy villains. Right now, the guys you're mad at if you're a Royals fan are the guys ostensibly you want to root for, because nobody gets into rooting for a baseball team to get real excited for the owner or for the general manager, the guys in the suits, or even the manager. You root for the players. And right now, those guys stink. Like, you point at them. It's their fault. They're here because they are losing baseball games at a remarkable clip. And those are guys you're supposed to like. You're supposed to at least be able to say, man, this is a bad team, but I'm pulling for this guy. I'm pulling for that guy. I like the way they play. I have a good memory of them getting a big hit to win a game. Those are the guys that you have to be the most frustrated with right now, because it's kind of on them the most, and they are not getting it done.
It just is a crappy place to be. Mark also comments on YouTube, glad I have other stuff to watch, like the upcoming Women's World Cup. I was watching SportsCenter last night, and they were showing highlights of the Atlanta Dream and the New York Liberty of the WNBA. Aaliyah Boston, by the way, in a different game, had an awesome, awesome night. And I thought, with how bad the Royals are, I would freaking kill to have a WNBA team right now. We would be butt deep in WNBA talk on this program if we had that alternative right now.
I'd be breaking down X's and O's like you would not believe.
I would have so many thoughts on Sabrina Ionescu's hamstring injury. You wouldn't believe it. But we do not have that. We do have a team that is very bad in Major League Baseball. And our pal Jesse Newell from the Kansas City Star covered KU for a long time, covers the Kansas City Chiefs now. But as we know, huge Royals fan, always has been, very in tune with what is going on with the Kansas City Royals. And he went digging through some statistics at Fangraphs this week about the Royals and how they have been, awful all the time, but in quote unquote clutch situations, high leverage situations, they have been historically dreadful pretty much from the very beginning of this season. So high leverage situations, without getting too deep into the weeds, as Jesse phrases it, it's the moments where games are decided. You're talking about 2 outs, late in games, guys on base. Several of those factors combined together.
The game sits on a knife's edge and you've got a chance to maybe tie the game or take the lead or even just like put the winning runs on base. Those at-bats are also considered to be high leverage at-bats. Obviously, you get more of them later in games, at the end of games, and you get some in middle of games. Sometimes you go back and look and say, okay, actually, this game turned on this at-bat in the 3rd inning, or this at-bat turned in this at-bat in the 4th inning. But generally, most of these at-bats take place in the late frames. And it is fair to point out, before we really dive into the numbers, that in modern baseball, it is harder to hit in the late innings because you are seeing relievers who throw harder and throw nastier breaking stuff than the starters generally, because they are designed that way. They are engineered, if you will, to throw harder and be nastier and empty the tank in their short stints. It's a little different than seeing a starter. We're seeing a starter for the 2nd time or for a 3rd time. So there tends to be, in some instances, there's a dip in the high leverage situations or the late inning batting situations because the degree of difficulty ratchets up a little bit. So we'll note that in fairness before we dig into these gruesome numbers.
For sure. No, I think that's entirely valid. And if you look at I think it's easy to understand, okay, well, teams that are generally good probably have good numbers in the clutch. Teams that are generally bad probably have bad numbers in the clutch, right? I think that's a pretty obvious school of thought. You look at the top 6, okay? I think that's a good number. Sorry to leave your Rockies out there 7th right now. Arizona, pretty good this year. They're pretty good. They're number 1 in Major League Baseball, just simply batting average in high leverage situations. Again, late game, guys on base, multiple outs, etc. Those situations, Arizona's been hitting the ball on average better than anybody else. Number 2, Baltimore. Not great, but contending for a playoff spot. Number 3, Tampa Bay, best team in baseball. Number 4, Texas Rangers, best offense scoring-wise in baseball. 5th is the Miami Marlins, who are at 286, which is above average, well above Major League average. They're the best team in baseball in one-run games this year, to a frightening degree almost. And then 6th, I factor Atlanta in here too, because Atlanta also has one of the best lineups in all of baseball. We talked about them earlier in the year. They really don't have any holes when everyone's healthy. Let's move to the bottom 2. Let's jump all the way to numbers 29 and 30, shall we? Number 29 is the Minnesota Twins. They've had injury problems. Their roster is just kind of mediocre in and of itself. They're below the Mendoza line as a team in high leverage, batting 197. That's not good. No one would say, I got 197. Awesome. No, that's not good. They are. Oh, go ahead.
No, finish.
They are still 56 points ahead of the Kansas City Royals in last place. The Royals are batting 141 in high leverage.
Can I interrupt this with bad Royals news?
Absolutely.
Vinny Pasquantino's out for the year. The Royals have just announced that Pasquantino is expected to miss the remainder of the season. This is from Twitter, as he will require surgery to repair a torn labrum in his right shoulder.
Okay, we will revisit these numbers in a little bit. That is...
It sucks.
Yeah, man.
I'm sorry. I know you come for in-depth analysis, but like that's the Royals' second best hitter and he's out for the year. That sucks.
I know.
I got nothing more for you than that.
I just gave you my diatribe about how bad I feel for you, Royals fans, because this blows. That is, I mean, that's awful. Now, I will give you the thinnest, tiniest, barely visible silver lining to this gray cloud. This is 2 years in a row Vinny has had this injury.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Quatrero said that. This is the same thing he dealt with last year.
Yeah.
If you believe that he is a long-term core piece of a competitive roster.
And I believe that offensively he can be.
I would rather say, you know what? This season is lost. We are awful. This is a lost year. Get help. Get fixed. Get right.
Mm-hmm.
Get it taken care of. Hopefully it will never be a problem again.
Yeah.
And then from 24 onward, we'll get peak Vinny. And if that is the case, then there probably is a little bit of a blessing in disguise here. But also, if you're a Royals fan, if you're a Royals stakeholder, you have been looking to the future for the more than half a decade at this point. And I can totally understand if you say, no, I'm not going to think about that because I want a team that wins or is at least competitive or at least competent now. And I hate that maybe our best player this year is not going to be out there. I will not argue that. And again, like I've said 3 times now, I feel for you because this really blows.
Yeah, huge bummer. You hope he can get right. I guess my Insta analysis of this is you can play Nick Pratto at first base the rest of the season, and you can DH Edward Olivares the rest of the season, which is the position that both of those guys are best suited for.
True.
Don't have to mess around with Pratto in the outfield. You don't have to mess around with Olivares in the outfield. You settle the lineup mix just a little bit. And that's for the best for finding out, I think, what you have with Nick Pratto, because you need to find out.
Yeah.
And I think you really need to find out what you have with Olivares, because I think if he is a good enough hitter to hold down some DH at bats, I think he might be an attractive trade chip and somebody the Royals should look to move because he's 27 and he can't play defense. And maybe there's another team out there that could use his bat or plays in a smaller outfield where his outfield defense would be less harmful. But he's 27 without a position, and that's kind of player that, you know, a good month of at bats, see if he can spin him to a contender.
That's an entirely fair point.
That's what I do.
So I mean, it's hard to spin this as a good thing.
You know who else I feel bad for?
Who?
The Pasquatch guy.
Oh yeah, like, hey, he's out of a job.
Yeah, man. I hope they don't like put him out on the street or anything. Although he's probably, let's be real, that guy, whoever he is probably thinking, man, I guess I don't have to put on that suit when it gets real hot here in June and July.
Melting out there on top of the Hall of Fame.
You know, yeah, you know, there's his silver lining.
You really can't spin this as a good thing because losing arguably your best player so far this year, even on a terrible team, it just is awful news. But maybe there is something, you know, maybe you can find the phoenix rising from the ashes, so to speak. You can find, all right, we've settled things down. We can move this guy in a trade. We can get Vinny fully healthy for the long run. That's all I got for you. Well, let's take a break. We'll get into these numbers a little bit later because I do think they're interesting. And I do think they're worth breaking down. So we'll get into those in a little bit. We've got some One Gotta Go coming up. We'll also take your texts, 785-272-9429. And we will get to your YouTube comments as well on our Sports on 580 WIBW YouTube channel. We'll take a break. One Gotta Go's next here on 580 Sports Talk.
gotta go.
Let's play some One Gotta Go, shall we, here on this Wednesday edition of 580 Sports Talk. Do you know what June 14th is?
June 14th.
Today? Yeah.
I don't know, Flag Day?
It is Flag Day.
Hey!
Well done. So, my One Gotta Go, and then there's also a secondary question attached to it. I can only think of three because look, not that you would do anything to stir the pot, but I'm going to leave the American flag out of this because there's too much political stuff attached to that. So I'm going to give you three flags. One's got to go. You can have the Kansas state flag, the flag of the city of Topeka, or your home state's flag, the flag of the state of Colorado, but one's got to go.
No, the state of Colorado flag is perfection.
It's pretty cool.
It is one of the absolute best state flags. So definitely keeping that one. The Kansas flag is just one of a bunch that are like blue with some art and then the state name on it. Like there's a lot of flags that look just like it.
Yeah.
And so there are not many flags that look like the Topeka flag, which I actually kind of dig.
I like the new one.
So I gotta say the Kansas flag has to go. Not a knock, just it's not as unique as the other two.
I think the Kansas flag has done a good job of, I like the little sunflower at the top of the shield on top of the flag. I think that separates a little bit, but there are an absurd number of state flags that are just designed on top of a blue field, specifically like a small center focal point on a blue field. A lot of them are even circles. Nebraska's is very similar. Utah's is very similar. Pretty much all of the ones in the Northeast are very similar. So I'd probably have to go Kansas, too. I like the new Topeka flag. Yeah. The secondary question, what is your favorite flag? State, country, locale?
Oh, man, what a cool question. I used to, be obsessed with flags when I was a kid.
I love flags. Vexillology. That's the study of flags.
Is that right?
Yeah, huge fan. I think flags are awesome.
You know what flag I always liked? Not because it's got a cool design, but I liked the blue, black, and white of the Estonia flag. I thought that was really a unique, color combination. It's just 3 bars, you know.
Oh yeah, I know it. I had to look it up, but I know which one you're talking about.
The blue and the black, with the white middle stripe. I always thought that was kind of a cool one. Man, you know, without getting too into the weeds of what it represented, that old hammer and sickle the USSR used to use is kind of bad, kind of tough. That kind of tough.
I mean, in and of itself,
what's the one with the Reaper on it? Is that Morocco? Like, what am I thinking of here? Not Morocco.
That's a great question. I don't know if I know that one.
If
you Google flag with Reaper, you get some sort of video game thing that I'm unaware of. I don't know.
Oh, man.
The Moroccan flag is red with a star in the middle.
Okay. Yeah, it's not that one.
It's an interconnected star.
I don't know which one I'm thinking of. It's got, it's going to bother me.
I might know what, it is a small country. I don't know which one it is, but I do think I know what you're talking about.
It's not Macedonia. I don't know, man.
I was going to guess something Caribbean, actually.
Jamaica's got a super cool flag.
Yeah, Jamaica's is cool.
Yeah.
I'm not technically from Chicago, but the greater Chicago area. The Chicago City flag is awesome because it's
I like it.
The 3 white stripes are for the 3 sides of the city, north, south, west. The 2 blue stripes are for the river. The 4 stars are for either the greatest or worst things to ever happen in the city. Fort Dearborn Massacre, the 2 World's Fairs, and the Great Chicago Fire. And each point of each star represents something too. But I don't remember those 24 things. That's really cool. I love the South.
One for each of Ferguson Jenkins's wins in 1967
right.
or something.
South Carolina has an awesome state flag, the palmetto and the crescent. That's really cool. Arizona's state flag is really cool, I think. Those are the ones that jump out to me.
I always like the bear in California.
Yeah.
I should have said Ferguson Jenkins' wins in 1971. He won exactly 24 games that year.
They also, I have a Fergie Jenkins ball signed on my desk. This one has also become political fodder over the last 15 years. The Gadsden flag is awesome. The yellow field, the Don't Tread on Me.
Mm-hmm.
Again, highly politicized, but the flag itself is cool. Ben Franklin's Join or Die, the cut up snake with the colonies. That one, again, going back to the Revolutionary era. Yeah, those are some of my favorites.
Know your history. Nomination for the Maryland flag from the 785.
Yeah,
very polarizing.
Great take. Love the Maryland flag.
Love the flag. Hate it as a design element on sports uniforms.
Alaska got the Big Dipper.
Mm-hmm.
That's a cool one.
Yeah, that is a cool one.
Wyoming's is cool with the buffalo on it. Buffalo, elite animal. Love the buffalo. Well, the American buffalo, aka the bison. Yeah, send us your favorite flags. YouTube comments or on the text line 785-272-9429.
Vance on the YouTube comments in with the checkered flag, which on brand for our guy Vance, one of the biggest racing fans we know on the program.
Hey, I will say this. That is iconic. You see that flag, you know exactly what it means.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'll give points for that one.
So for my one gotta go, we have handed out the championship hardware in the NHL and the NBA in each of the last 2 nights. So let's assemble the championship hardware in the 4 major sports.
Ooh.
The Larry O'Brien Trophy in the NBA, the Stanley Cup in the NHL, the Lombardi Trophy in the NFL, and the Commissioner's Trophy in Major League Baseball. One of those gotta go, aesthetically speaking.
Ooh, aesthetically speaking. I'm going to knock out the Larry O'Brien Trophy. I think there's something. The Stanley Cup stays. That is just so perfect, and the way they put the names on it, and they put the rings in the Hall of Fame. It's perfect. The Stanley Cup stays. I think the Lombardi Trophy is awesome. I know it's never changed. It's been the same ever since it was created. But it's sleek. Again, it is iconic. I think it's fairly simple in a still meaningful way. I'm keeping the Lombardi. And I think that the Commissioner's Trophy is unique enough. I like the flags. I like how it is, I don't know what word you would use, like tilted, essentially. I like the Commissioner's Trophy, unlike Rob Manfred. I'm a big fan of that
Yeah,
one.
just a hunk of metal.
The Larry O'Brien Trophy, to me, kind of feels like a really cool fantasy football trophy. Like the ball going into the hoop, like I get it, but also, I don't know, it's a little contrived.
It took me a long time to figure out like what it was when I was younger.
I
like,
get that.
Didn't really understand like what they were going for there. They've redesigned it in recent years. I think in the last couple of years, it's undergone a redesign. It's gotten bigger. Apparently it's really big. My source on this is Nuggets rookie Peyton Watson, who got caught on open mic during the trophy presentation the other night saying, I think it was Peyton Watson, because he was the closest to the microphone. And he said, and I quote, that trophy big as a, before they cut him off. So it's bigger, I think, than it used to be. Like it's a bigger version of what Jordan and Kobe and those guys won. And there's like more accoutrements to it. Like they have the winning teams' names etched in the base now. I don't love that one, but it is uniquely, like you couldn't give that in another sport. You couldn't give the Lombardi Trophy in another sport. You couldn't give the Stanley Cup really in another sport. It's just so ingrained with the culture, but you could give the Commissioner's Trophy, like it is. I mean, when your own commissioner thinks it's just a hunk of metal, that to me says that's the one that's got to go.
All right. That's fair. I think that's entirely fair. Did you see the clips of the various Knights players putting their babies in the cup last night?
I did not. No.
Yeah. Apparently a lot of the Vegas Golden Knights players recently had children that are now very small, and they were just putting them in the cup. And I thought, wow, that's really cute. That child needs to be disinfected immediately. There has been a lot of stuff put in that cup.
Listen, my wife was appalled last year when I was telling her, like, when the Avs won the cup last year, and I'm introducing her to, like, the lore of this trophy that she had no reason to ever have any interest in before I came into her life. I was, people drink out of the cup all the time. They put their babies in it. My wife, horrified. Absolutely horrified by the notion. Like, they clean it. I don't care.
Yeah. There's a radio host in Chicago who claimed that after the Blackhawks won the Stanley Cup in 2010, he said up until that point, the first, 30 whatever years of his life, never got sick. He was just like, as a little kid, sure, but like just never got sick, never missed a day of work for sickness, nothing. Said after he went to a party with some of the players and drank out of the cup, it's like, I get sick all the time. I can't help it. Like every year now, multiple times, I will go through like weeks where I just don't feel well. And he blames the Stanley Cup for it.
Every germ ever lives in that Stanley Cup.
Yeah, I remember when the Blackhawks were in the midst of their dynasty here, and those teams were filled. Hockey players are kind of wild boys in general.
Oh, yeah.
Those Blackhawks teams, you know anything about mid-2010s hockey, notorious group of guys on that team. And wasn't just alcohol being poured into that cup. It was some grosser stuff. It just, ew.
Yeah.
I touched the cup one time. I would not ever touch the inside of the cup itself.
No, never.
No way. No way. Let's take a quick timeout. When we come back, did want to get to some of these Royal stats that Jesse Newell put out there on Twitter. Obviously, an even bigger how do you put a damper on a day that starts with the Royals are the worst team in baseball? How do you even make that worse? Well, we found out earlier with Vinny Pasquantino's injury and subsequent surgery. We'll talk some more Royals baseball after this here on 580 Sports Talk.
I'm Jim Chesko with your money.
We've got a couple favorite flag entries from the YouTube comments. Y'all got jokes today. These are funny. This is 580 Sports Talk, by the way. Brendan and Dan here with you. Mark says the yellow NFL penalty flag.
Okay.
Dale then says Andy Reid's challenge flag.
I've never been happy to see the yellow flag.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe if you're a Chiefs fan, one time you were happy to see it on a certain third down in a certain Super Bowl that happened a certain few months ago. But
or the AFC Championship game, too.
Oh, yeah.
Poor Joseph Asai. I still feel bad for him.
That's tough.
Dumb penalty, but still. We have also discovered what flag you were thinking of.
Yeah, I was thinking about the Angola, the flag of Angola. Not a reaper, a machete on that flag. They've got it's half red, half black. You've got the machete. You've got like half a gear wheel, and the 5-pointed red star. It's gold, but it referred to generally as the red star. Very cool flag.
Yeah, it's pretty sick.
Yeah, it goes really hard.
I've never seen the machete on a flag. I was gonna guess it was somewhere in South America or the Caribbean, but I was wrong about that. Wanted to touch on this from Jesse Newell, and again, we brought this up a little bit earlier. We didn't get to dive too far into it because we found out Vinny Pasquantino is out for the season. But the Royals and how awful they have been in the clutch this year. We told you that they are batting 141. in clutch high leverage situations, which is 56 points worse than the second worst team in baseball, the Minnesota Twins. You've got the same distance between team 29 and 30 as you do between team 29 and 14. That's the gap. That's how bad the Royals have been in high leverage.
It's amazing to put another number on it rather than give you like the slash lines and all that other stuff. Fangraphs uses the weighted runs created plus metric that just kind of averages everything out and gives you a number where 100 is average and you want to be above 100 because that's good. You don't want to be below 100 because that's bad. You really don't want to be real far below 100 because that's real bad. The Royals in high leverage have a 27 weighted runs created plus. 27. That means they are 73% worse than league average in high leverage situations.
Not than the best team in the league, league average.
Then just average. They're that far below. That's not even, you can't even see average. That's not you're underwater. That's you're in the Marianas Trench.
Well, let's flip it around. The bats are really, really bad in high leverage. The pitchers can't be that bad, right? The pitching cannot be quite that bad in high leverage situations. We told you the best batting team in the league in high leverage is the Arizona Diamondbacks. They bat .322 in high leverage situations.
Pretty remarkable. They don't have a team full of .320 hitters, but they've been really good when the chips have been down.
Royals opponents are hitting .332 against Royals pitchers in the clutch. So Royals opponents are the best team in the clutch in all of baseball. No pitching staff is allowing better than a 300 average. Oakland's close. Except the Royals, who are at .332. That's a 33-point difference. That is the same as the gap from 1 to 2 as 2 to 8. I mean, it's just unfathomable that pitching, they're by far the worst in baseball in high leverage situations, and they're twice as bad offensively.
There have only been 7 individual seasons in Royals history where a player has hit .332 or better in any scenario. And look, this is not to say, well, actually, these Royals hitters and pitchers are secretly good. They've just been super unlucky, unfathomably unlucky in these situations. Like, this doesn't happen if you're not lacking in your skill level. Like, this is partly because the Royals are not good. But the extent to which they have failed in high leverage situations is still uncommon. It is still something that should not be happening. I went back and I looked hitter by hitter at the Royals offensive stalwarts, the guys who've been in the lineup just about every day, and what they hit just in general and what they hit in the high leverage situations. And it is amazing. It is amazing. I took weighted runs created plus again, because rather than spit a bunch of numbers at you, I'll just give you the one. Weighted runs created plus. Right now, Nick Pratto is the best hitter on the Royals in that category. He's got a 120 weighted runs created plus.
That's pretty good.
20% above league average.
Yeah.
Pretty good year. In the clutch, 13.
No.
13. That would include his strikeout looking with the bases loaded last night. Salvador Perez, 116 WRC plus. He's 16% above league average as an offensive player this year.
Yeah.
When adjusted, and again, this is a stat that adjusts for league environment and where you play and who you face and all of those things. 16% above league average. Salvi in the clutch, 66 weighted runs created plus. That's 50 points lower. Vinny Pasquantino, who again is out for the year, he's going to undergo a surgery to repair a torn labrum in his right shoulder. He was 6% above league average, 106 WRC plus, 22 in high leverage situations. Bobby Witt Jr., 86 weighted runs created plus. Not real good. Having a rough year.
Yeah.
14% below league average, 24 in the clutch. MJ Melendez, 78 weighted runs created plus. That's bad. That's not what you want. 23 in the clutch. Michael Massey, 62 weighted runs created plus a 62. Terrible. Even worse in the clutch. 22 weighted run created plus a 22. And he's got the most high leverage at bats on the whole team. There is one outlier. There is one exception to all this. It's Eddie O. Edward Olivares, 106. So he's 6% above league average. Weighted runs created plus a 106 all the time. In the clutch, he's God. He's 191. He's 91% better than league average. So Eddie O is handling these situations just fine. But you've got young players here who are struggling or thriving to varying degrees. And in these big situations are coming up short. Now, there are two ways you can look at that. You can look at that as some sort of moral failing or constitutional failing, that they don't have the stomach for the big spots. They don't have the chest, as Les Miles would have said once upon a time.
Shout out to Gunnar Keel.
Or you can say that, man, maybe they're squeezing the sawdust out of the bats in these spots because they understand they're up here at the big league level. They're young players and they're trying to win and they're trying to turn this ship around. And they understand that those opportunities to get the big hit, to tie the game, to take the lead, to start a rally are big deals and maybe just maybe pressing a little bit. I think there's probably some truth to that, more so than I would say that these guys are just unclutch, genetically, hereditarily unclutch because they're Kansas City Royals.
To that point, and we're tight to the break here, so I'll defer this question to you for a quick answer. Christopher asks us on YouTube, are you guys believers in quote-unquote clutch? I'm not normally, but I will concede that it matters a bit more when you're younger trying to prove yourself. That we were discussing that before the show. Like, that's a debate you could have any given day during a baseball season. It's kind of one of the long-lasting, what if debates in baseball.
Is clutch real? The greatest thread in the history of forums.
And that's kind of what brings us to this. Like, this is a new manifestation of that question, I think. I'm curious what you think. I generally believe no. Like, I think a clutch situation is different than being, like, a great clutch hitter. Like, I think David Ortiz was great in the clutch because David Ortiz was a Hall of Famer. Like, I don't necessarily think he
great
was
hitters are great in the clutch.
Right.
Like Derek Jeter, his clutch numbers in his career are basically the same as his just regular old numbers. They're the same. And over a long enough period of time, the argument goes, you will hit in the clutch the way that you hit in all situations over over a wide enough sample size. So the point that we're making is things are going to get better because they can't get worse. And because there's an established baseline of performance that if Nick Prado's a 20% above league average hitter, he's not going to be 87% below league average when the chips are down the rest of the season. It's just not going to happen. These guys are going to put some hits together with runners in scoring position, and maybe one leads to another, and they feel like a little pressure comes off of them. But for right now, I think this is a group just squeezing the sawdust out of bats in clutch situations.
We've got to get to that aforementioned commercial break coming up in the 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk. A lot of college football to get to. We'll compare the rosters for KU and K-State, and Tim Fitzgerald will join us for the Wildcat wrap-up. We'll get to all that and more on 580 Sports Talk.
Your Grand Canyon
4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk coming your way here on the Sports Voice of Kansas, 580 WIBW. I'm Brendan Dworzynski. He's Dan Lucero, and we're with you until 6 o'clock today on this edition of 580 Sports Talk. We've got Royals baseball coming up tonight. Pregame at 6:30, first pitch at 7:10, series finale for the Royals and the Reds. No Jordan Lyles pitching for the next several days. That's nice. It'll be Daniel Lynch on the bump today. Ben Lively. More like Blake Lively, am I right?
Yeah, you're right.
Got him. I don't even really know what she's famous for. I know she's famous. I don't really know what for, though.
Good actress. She's been in some good movies. She's in The Town. Good flick. Joe Mazzulla's favorite movie.
Joe Mazzulla, huge fan.
She was in... Oh, what else was she in?
According to her filmography...
She's married to Ryan Reynolds.
Okay. Yeah, she wore that wild dress a couple years ago to the Met. I can't believe I said that, but I know I'm right. It changed colors. Like if she pulled it to the left, it was bronze, and if she pulled it to the right, it was green. It was like the Statue of Liberty.
Cool.
Again, I sound insane, but I promise you I know that I'm right about this. Oh, I mean, she was in the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants.
I didn't see that one.
Yeah, me either.
I missed that one in theaters.
Other than The Town, I have not seen anything she's been in.
Really?
Not anything. No. I do not know any of it. She was in Gossip Girl. Never watched that.
Yeah, that might have been where she really got famous.
And yeah, that's all I got.
That sounds about right. Yeah, she's main character on that one.
Yeah, never watched that show.
You didn't see Accepted? That's a good movie.
I glossed. Okay, I've seen Accepted.
Yeah,
I've seen Accepted.
Accepted's a really good movie.
The South Harmon Institute of Technology.
Yeah. So funny.
Okay, yes, I have seen Accepted. All right. Shout out to Blake Lively. Unrelated, Ben Lively pitching for the Reds coming up today.
Former Royal Ben Lively.
Oh, man. I'm going to be honest with you, man. I do not remember that era of Royals baseball.
It wasn't that long ago.
When did Ben Lively pitch for the Royals?
Ben Lively made 6 appearances for the Royals from 2018 to 2019, including one in 2019 in which he gave up 3 runs on 3 hits, including a home run in 1 inning of work. His career ERA with the Royals, 4.7 in 7 2/3 innings.
Yeah, I don't remember that one. Wow, he's been out of the major leagues since that.
Yes, he's a great story of perseverance.
That was against the Angels, by the way. He threw 18 pitches in 1 inning and gave up 3 runs. There's your Ben Lively insight for this matchup today. Has not been great. Hasn't been putrid, but hasn't really been great this year. Went and looked at some of the peripherals. That's your pitching matchup for tonight. We'll preview that game coming up at the bottom of the 5 o'clock hour. We've also got a little overtime. Kellis Robinette joined Mic'd Up today, and we will re-rack that conversation, and we'll hear from Kellis of the Wichita Eagle coming up at the top of the 6 o'clock hour. This hour, we've got our own K-State conversation coming your way. Tim Fitzgerald is going to stop by bottom of this hour on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline for today's Azura Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up. A lot to get to on the K-State front. We've got today's What Is Wrong With You, and I wanted to touch on this to lead things off. Plus, by the way, keep sending your texts in, 785-272-9429. And also, the YouTube comment section is open to our YouTube channel called Sports on 580 WIBW. So the Phil Steele magazine, it is the best college football preview ever, every single year. It is phenomenal. And while the magazine itself is not out yet, we do know who his all Big 12 preseason teams are. Those have come out. All the different teams have, well, almost all the different teams have publicized who has made their teams. I've had a devil of a time finding Kansas State's. Have you been able to find where K-State lists?
I have not. Like most teams kind of put these out like here and there.
Yeah, like KU put out a press release.
Yeah, some teams put out a press release. I don't believe K-State has.
So we do know.
I'm going to check one more site, but no, I don't think they've put anything out.
I do know because the BYU website posted the number of selections from each school, which was very useful. Not exactly who they were, but posted them. So shout out to BYU's SIDs. Number one in the league, Texas. They got the most players put on the Phil Steele first, second, third teams. I get it. Number two is K-State. They got 13 players across the three teams. Number three, with 12 picks, KU. KU and K-State, second and third most preseason all-league picks.
And, last year when we talked about the media's first and second team preseason all Big 12, it stood out that K-State rather had the most of any team, and kind of felt like a harbinger or something, and it was because they won the league.
Yeah.
And they won the championship game.
Who would have known that having better talent than everyone and also better coaching makes you really good?
Yeah. So, does this mean anything? Yes and no. These teams will obviously look dramatically different when we get to the end of the year, but game's about dudes. If I can borrow from K-State's basketball coach, it's about having dudes, and dudes get on preseason all-conference teams, generally speaking.
So what I wanted to do was take these two rosters, put them head-to-head. We'll revisit this when we get to this year's Sunflower Showdown come mid-November. But right now, as we get ready for fall camp, as we get ready for the 2023 season, if you pit each team's position groups against one another, which team has the advantage head-to-head? We'll do offensive groups. We'll do defensive groups. Let's start with, and this is amazing, especially on the Kansas side, because it's been a while since KU has had a quarterback this good, like Todd Reesing. You put the quarterback room for KU against the quarterback room for K-State. Who do you give the advantage to?
Is it a cop-out to say it's a push?
I don't think so.
Listen, if you want to tell me, hey, depth matters here, and we know that there are two guys who can come into a game and lead the offense, where if Will Howard gets hurt, we don't necessarily know that about Kansas State. You want to make that the basis of your argument for KU? I think that's a entirely fair argument. If you want to say there's more depth in the K-State room with guys with higher recruiting pedigrees that you feel like have a chance to be impactful when and if they get their opportunity, then I understand if that's your argument for K-State. If you like Will Howard better, that's your K-State argument. If you like Jalen Daniels better, that's your KU argument. I lean Howard, and the reason I lean Howard is because Daniels is a little smaller, maybe a little more apt to get hurt, maybe proven to be not as much. Let me rephrase this in a way that's actually in English. Howard, I think, can make more throws than Daniels can.
Okay.
So I lean K-State, but holy cow, that to me, that's the closest one. And if you were to tell me that those two plus, maybe Texas, if you're still really drinking the Quinn Ewers Kool-Aid and you really like Arch Manning, if you want to say those are the three best quarterback rooms in the conference, the entire conference, and two of the best quarterback rooms in America, I would listen. I'm absolutely listening.
I think the two best quarterbacks in the Big 12 in some order are Jalen Daniels and Will Howard. I will go with Daniels by a hair because I think his dynamic athleticism gives them a little bit of a boost. And in this discussion, I'll take the KU room in general too, because I will side with Bean. That we know, now KU didn't win a lot of games when Bean had to play, and I do think that has to be factored in here. But the standard of play you're getting when he has to come into a game. We don't know, if Avery Johnson, for example, wins the backup role for K-State, I don't know that he will. That's a pretty jam-packed room that K-State has in the quarterback room. Let's say he wins it. We don't know what that's going to look like you said. So I would lean KU. But again, if you want to tell me, I think the best quarterback in the league after last season is Will Howard, and this is why, I would have a hard time debating that. I think my reasoning against Howard would just be, I think to this point, his good has been NFL good. His bad was also 2 years worth of, I think he is going to drop down and transfer to Akron. There was such a change from his sophomore to his junior year that I think I need a little bit more data to say Howard's that dude. But given the last time we saw either of them, I think they're neck and neck for best quarterback in the league. Running back, I think, is fascinating. I love Devin Neal. I like Daniel Highshaw, assuming he is healthy. I mean, that was a serious injury. He missed a lot of last season, never got to come back, but he was really good at the start of the year. I like KU's depth. So they got Morrison back for another year, too. K-State, though, you could argue, the best transfer running back in the country this year. There are a lot of people around college football who will tell you he might not be Deuce Vaughn, and there are different players, but K-State hit not just a home run, they hit a grand slam getting Trayshawn Ward from Florida State. A lot of college football people are really excited about that addition and that fit in the K-State offense with Trayshawn Ward. Again, I would lean KU because I think you've got a little more continuity. And not entire. I mean, DJ Giddens is back for K-State, too, and we've been very high on him since his high school days.
That's no small thing. That should still give – you would think there's a bit more of a job share because, Deuce Vaughn wasn't coming off the field unless he, couldn't catch his breath. So he got the bulk of the carries. Maybe there's a bit more of a job share between Ward and Giddens this year for K-State, but Giddens showed in his opportunities, he looked like a feature back.
He can catch the ball a little bit out of the backfield. He's tough. He's bulky. I would lean because you've got three guys who can contribute and are fits right away. I will, again, give a slight edge to Kansas here. And if you want to call me biased, fine. But I think the K-State group is, again, right there, and I will hear an argument for them, too.
It's a bit like the quarterback argument, where if you like the K-State side, if you're coming from this from a totally neutral perspective, what you're betting on is probably like ceiling and what Ward can be in this offense, potentially coming in as a transfer. If you're siding with Kansas, again, putting your preconceived notions aside that you might have, then you're banking on depth and a higher floor because you have these guys who are established in the KU offense and what you're going to get out of them. And there are more of them who have seen the field and contributed reliably. Like who's running back number 3 for K-State? Jordan Shippers. Shout out to Colby. Shout out to him scoring a touchdown in the Sugar Bowl. But is he running back 3?
Might be.
Where does the depth chart go from there? Whereas with KU, you're a little more covered in case of injury. So, again, understand the argument from both sides. I'm more of a ceiling guy than a floor guy when it comes to ranking these things.
Totally fair.
So it just happens that in both cases that causes me to nod in Kansas State's direction.
Moving to the wide receivers, where do you land on K-State's wide receivers? A couple years ago, it was this might be the offense's downfall. Last year, it was Chris Kleiman telling us, hey, guys, for real, this is a good group. Trust me on this. And they ended up having a very good season. Where do you land on them as we stand right now? I'm not sure I have a fully formed opinion at the moment.
Well, I'll tell you this. Last year, we heard whispers around this time of year, spring and into the summer, like, hey, watch out for R.J. Garcia. And then R.J. Garcia didn't do anything until he caught a touchdown pass literally in the Big 12 championship game. So
that was awesome. I'm not going to lie. Yeah, that was awesome.
I think you and I may have been the only people not affiliated with Kansas State University in the press box at Jerry World who knew who that was.
Yeah. We definitely had people around us like, who?
Yeah. So he's back and Phillip Brooks is back. And then you've got a lot of question marks and maybe not as much of the established guys who've been, big players in other programs, with the exception of Keegan Johnson, who I think is going to be probably the guy who steps forward right away.
Loved that ad.
Jaden Jackson's a vet too at Ole Miss that will add to that, or he was with the team last year, didn't play much, but he had some previous experience and played some for K-State last year. So I think they could probably piece it together, but definitely I think a question mark of what is even going to look like, what that group's going to look like, who's going to earn that playing time. And I don't feel like that so much. Again, with KU, you feel like they've got a few more established guys.
I mean, you got Luke Grimm. Quentin Skinner had a good year last year. Another year of Douglas Emillion, just to name off a few of them. And look, and I know I'm missing a couple of guys. I know they really like the recruits they brought in. You're going to get Trevor Wilson, theoretically, for a full season as well. I would, again, go Kansas here. And I think this one is easier just because there are so many question marks for K-State. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because I think that means your ceiling could be very high, too. You're bringing in multiple Power 5 transfers. You have an opportunity there if you're K-State, if you're Will Howard, to truly prove, hey, I've never worked with any of these guys before, and I had another great year. I should be a top 100 pick in the NFL draft. But for a lot of these wide receivers, there's going to be a lot of playing time to claim, a lot of playing time to earn. I think there's a lot of potential there. I just think it's, at this stage of the year, a major question mark. Whereas I look at KU and I say, I know what Luke Grimm is going to give me. I know he can be a 700-yard, 60-catch receiver. I know that you've got the deep threat in, I just said his name, Quentin Skinner. Mm-hmm. I know that we have those guys. So I would, again, go with KU because I think simply enough, it comes down to we know what they can do. We don't know what these K-State guys are going to look like.
Yeah, my lean is KU for that same reason. Because you don't have, and maybe this is wrong, and maybe we'll see that it's wrong very early, but I don't sense that ceiling from the new guys that haven't played as much, that I feel like they're ceiling with the quarterback collection or the running back collection.
Tight ends, which I'm glad we get to talk about tight ends because KU actually uses theirs now, which is fun.
Mm-hmm.
I think the argument here is the depth, I think, is better for Kansas because I like Fairchild. Jared Casey just always makes the right play. Mm-hmm. He is always doing something well. And I think Trevor Cardell is another guy who, if they can get him a little bit more involved and get him a little more involved in the playbook, he can be a useful player. I like all those guys. I think the best tight end of the two schools goes to Kansas State because I think Ben Sinnott is getting drafted next year. And even if he doesn't, if the NFL views him as more of a fullback, H-back, that guy's going to play 15 years in the NFL. Yeah. I genuinely believe that.
I like Ben Sinnott a lot, and that's why I lean K-State here.
I think that's fair. I think that's entirely fair. The offense, I think there's a lot of close. I think there's a lot of good for KU. I think obviously a lot of good for K-State too, but I think you have a lot more discussion there. Defensively, I think this swings completely in the opposite direction. I think there's a lot of positions where KU's got a nice player here,
mm-hmm.
but K-State's depth, like defensive line's the number one example of this. I think there's a couple guys for KU, young guys, you say, yeah, I think there might be something
mm-hmm.
there. K-State's defensive line blows it out of the water. It's not really close.
We skipped over offensive line, but there's not much point in debating that. And that's with all due respect to KU's group because they've got some good players coming back on that line.
I think KU might have one of the 5 best lines in the conference.
K-State has the line coming back. Yeah, it's a big difference.
Yeah, which is totally fine.
Yeah.
And you're right. I did jump over that. But defensively, I think defensive line, that's a clear advantage for K-State. I think, and that includes interior and on the edge. The edge is where I'm the most scared for KU this year. I think they've got enough bodies inside that they can cobble something together. I genuinely have some worries about the edge. Lonnie Phelps covered for a lot last year. I could not believe he did not get drafted. He was so good for KU last year, even as kind of a tweener body at the next level. Linebacker's probably the area where it's closest for me between the two because I love Craig Young's game. I like Rich Miller's game a lot at KU. But again, K-State has just been, they just always have guys. Austin Moore back for another year. Who am I thinking of? Brendan Mott back for another year. Like, you've just got all these dudes. It's very similar to the pass catchers for KU. Like, you know what you're getting.
Yeah, Mott, Duke, and Matlack, pretty good place to start. And you've got some veteran, like, program guys who can give you some energy snaps, like Cody Stuffelbein, Jace Freeze, and guys like that.
Desmond Purnell, who's now a full-time linebacker, too.
Yeah.
Speak his own. So I think the front seven for sure for K-State.
The linebacker spot where you have Purnell, and you have Austin Moore, you have Jake Clifton, you have, obviously, Deuce Green. Like, that's pretty good. Yeah, the front seven for K-State, you feel like there's a lot of vets, and there's potential, like, big impact guys.
Full defensive backfield. We'll throw safeties and corners in here together for the sake of time. Again, there's a number of guys for KU who they start for either team. They might start for any team in this conference. Kobe Bryant's that good. He's skinny, but that's really and he gambles a little bit too much. But he is a really dang good player. Really good. Kenny Logan has been a solid all Big 12 caliber player in the middle of the defense at safety for years now for KU and has only gotten better. That's great to see. Hopefully he's fully healthy by fall camp. I think he's going to be. He was really banged up this spring. Had a cast on at one point, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but I believe he did. So you've got a couple of guys there who you really like. I think Mello Dotson's a nice player. I think there's a lot of good to work with there. But again, you've got a lot of established players, and you've got two of the best players like a Kobe Savage coming back for another year for this K-State secondary, that I think you probably have to go with the lean there. And you go with the fact that you've seen it before. You've seen great play from that group more often. That being said, it is not easy to replace Julius Brents and Josh Hayes.
Yeah,
that is not easy.
They're going to be a little thinner at corner
Yeah.
back this year. They didn't really they didn't do a ton to address that in the transfer portal, so they will be. They'll be thinner at that spot this coming season. Though I will say that I think Jacob Parrish is going to be really good.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch Keenan Garber this year. Remember, you want to talk about guys who came out of obscurity to make plays in the Big 12 championship game?
Yeah, Keenan Garber absolutely did.
He was not a cornerback to start last season.
No.
He was a wide receiver, the Free State product, but he comes up with a huge play near the end of the Big 12 championship game. I'm excited to see him and see that conversion come to a head. So I think K-State, again, you give a closer but still certain advantage to them on the back end. And I think front seven wise, there's a huge advantage there.
Yeah.
We'll toss special teams in because we're talking K-State football. Might as well mention special teams. No Ty Zentner. It's going to change things.
It is.
KU also completely overhauling both their kicker spots. So we'll see. I don't know. I will take anyone who's not Jacob Orchilla.
They certainly have. K-State has experience back with Chris Tennant, who obviously lost the gig last year, but certainly has a big leg. And maybe with nobody breathing down his neck at practice, maybe that helps him. Maybe a year of experience in practice, and he can be a more reliable option.
I'm excited, man. Like this is fun. How many times recently could you have said any of these were even close? Never.
Right?
Frankly, never.
This would have been a 5-minute segment like 2 years ago.
This would have filled from 450 to 455.
Right.
Said, okay, now we got to go to a commercial break. No, this is fun. And that's why there's so much excitement and why I wish they played this game the last week of the season like they're supposed to because it's rivalry week. Okay, done with the Big 12 scheduling. Let's get to a timeout. We'll talk to Tim Fitzgerald about some more K-State football and basketball. We got to talk to him about Arthur Kaluma coming up later on this hour. But first, we've got today's What Is Wrong With You up next on 580 Sports Talk. Let's see if anyone can take down yesterday's winner in What Is Wrong With You, sponsored by Top City Metal Supply, who cuts the metal you need to your specifications, which saves time, money, and material. Never settle when it comes to metal at Top City Metal Supply on South Topeka Boulevard. Our winner from yesterday is a man from Carbondale, Illinois, who really had to catch a flight. He just could not miss his flight, but he didn't have a way to get to the airport. So he stole a backhoe and drove that to the airport.
A backhoe.
And the authorities said, something seems wrong here. Why is this going on? He was eventually arrested in Nevada, where he got off the plane. 2 new stories matching up today to try to take that one down. Dan, why don't you go first today?
All right, we are going across the pond, and we meet 42-year-old barrister Henry Hendren, who wanted to buy some drugs. So barrister, for those who don't know, that's a lawyer, essentially. Okay. He wanted to buy some drugs, and he knew where he could buy some drugs because he's represented some drug dealers. And he asked one of them to buy some drugs and was arrested for trying to buy drugs from drug dealers that he knew because he represented them. Hendren asked to buy Class A meth and then Class C GBL from Arno Smith and another man, messages found on his mobile phone revealed. The lawyer, who had represented both men over drug supply allegations, was arrested outside Belmarsh Prison in May last year while visiting Smith as his lawyer. So he was jailed for 14 months recently by a judge after previously admitting 2 counts of intentionally encouraging or assisting the supply of Class A drugs, one similar charge involving Class C drugs, and a possession of a Class A drug. So just weeks before Smith was arrested, Hendren, who again was his lawyer, asked to buy drugs from Smith. He then represented Smith at the police station, the magistrate's court, and at Woolwich Crown Court, where his client entered not guilty pleas in November 2021. His lawyer knew he was guilty as hell. This guy definitely selling drugs. So Hendren was a fairly notable lawyer in Central London. He has been known for representing prominent clients, including the Earl of Cardigan. And now he has been jailed for 14 months because he tried to buy drugs from one of his clients, whom he represented in a drug trial.
Might have been a little easier if you said, hey, do you have a coworker I could talk to? I probably shouldn't take drugs from you, but can you point me to someone else who could sell me these drugs? I like the quote here from the judge. I believe this was the judge, who described Hendren as clearly bright and capable. It is clear you are a well-thought-of person, both professionally and personally. I want to make it clear this is not the fact that you are a barrister that is so serious. What is so serious is these offenses have been committed by you in the context of you asking those you represent or represented to supply you with drugs. You're clearly a smart guy. This was dumb, though. That's essentially what that quote is from the judge. My story today is going to take us to what WGN-TV Chicago describes as the northwest suburbs. This is almost Wisconsin. We go to the town of Lake Barrington, Illinois.
We had this debate.
Yeah, this is not the suburbs. This is southern Wisconsin. Lake Barrington, by the way, the average household income in this town is well over $100,000, just for what it's worth. A Lake Barrington man with a revoked firearm operator identification card. That's what you get in Illinois to be a legal gun owner. This guy had his card revoked. He has been arrested and charged after he accidentally shot himself while dreaming.
Oh, boy.
Deputies said they responded to a report of a person with a gunshot wound just before 10 o'clock the night of April 10th on Shoreline Road. When deputies arrived at the home, they found 62-year-old Mark DeCara with a gunshot wound to the leg. Deputies said to apply a tourniquet as he was losing a significant amount of blood. Further investigation revealed that DeCara had a dream someone was breaking into his home. In that dream, he retrieved his .357 Magnum revolver and shot at who he believed was the intruder. When he fired, he shot himself in the leg and woke up. He was taken to a local hospital where he was treated for his wounds, later released, and then he was arrested because the deputies learned he had his FOID card revoked, yet still possessed a firearm. That led to a charge of possession of a firearm without a valid card and reckless discharge of a firearm.
How'd he end up shooting himself when he thought he was trying to shoot at someone else? He was just groggily holding the gun.
Is this like an extreme version of when you dream about water and like you wet the bed? You ever heard that? Like,
No.
Oh yeah, if you dream that you're in the ocean, like you're gonna pee yourself when you sleep.
I have never heard that before.
Yeah. Well, apparently that happens with guns. You think you're shooting at a burglar, but you actually put a bullet in your thigh.
Just grab the gun, probably sitting loaded right next to him on his dresser, because everybody want to be Dirty Harry, and he like laying in bed with one leg up, probably just let one ride right into his. Lucky he didn't hit his femoral artery.
When I first read this, I was a little confused. I thought, so was he sleepwalking or what? But no, he just had his gun right by him. Just grabbed it and shot himself, thinking he was shooting a burglar who didn't exist. Maybe this is an idea for him that you should store this responsibly. Apparently not. Who you got for today?
Man, a lawyer tried to buy drugs from someone he knew was a drug dealer because he was representing them in a drug trial.
I will fight for you. By the way, can you give me some of those drugs you're being sued over?
That's a really roundabout way to become a drug addict. Get past the bar so you have access to drug dealers who might want you to represent them in court. And then voila, access to drugs.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
It feels like hustling way backwards.
You can't do that, man. You can't ask your client for drugs and then represent them as well. Is that enough to knock down the stolen backhoe?
Nah, man, he stole a backhoe.
You're not even going fast. We looked at it yesterday. You can only go 20 miles an hour on one of those.
He had just him and his guitar, hop in a backhoe, taken to the airport.
Like a Waylon Jennings song. That will remain our winner this week, or at least for today, in What Is Wrong With You, sponsored by Top City Metal Supply. Metal cut to order when you need it. That's Top City Metal Supply on South Topeka Boulevard. Let's take a time out before we chat with Tim Fitzgerald of GoPowerCat.com next here on 580 Sports Talk.
Kansas State victory.
It's always a big K-State victory when we talk to Tim Fitzgerald, publisher of GoPowerCat.com. Fitz will join us on the phone here in just a moment. A lot to get to on the K-State athletics front, football, basketball, and more. Make sure you're heading over to GoPowerCat.com to check out all of the best coverage of all things Wildcats. And go follow Fitz on Twitter as well, at Life of Fitz. We've got him on the horn right now. What's going on, Fitz? How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well, man. It's been a good day. Lovely weather outside. Not raining for now, so no, we'll take it. Things are good.
I know. We haven't had the air conditioning on for like 3-4 days. It's wonderful.
What do you normally run your AC at?
I would prefer somewhere in the low 50s. I'm told that's too cold. Usually it's, I think our air temperatures are 72 AC and 68 in the winter.
I think that's fair. When I lived alone, I didn't run my AC because, to be frank, I was cheap and I didn't feel like I needed it. Now we run our apartment at whatever my wife wants to feel comfortable.
Correct.
That is a good decision. That is the way you. Yeah, I'm telling you what. That's a great decision you made, even if it wasn't your idea. Saying that is your idea.
Hey, whatever.
What we got to do to survive?
What was that?
What we got to do to survive?
Yeah, well, exactly. Hey, as long as she's happy, I'm certainly happy. By the way, Fitz, do you have any good conversations recently with Hall of Fame football coaches?
Yeah, that went well. It was great. My Life of Fitz podcast that just dropped this morning with Coach Snyder. I actually recorded it last week. I was hoping to get 40 minutes out of him before I could tell he was growing a little bored with, the whole thing. We went an hour, and I finally had to cut it off because I have an interesting machine that like only records an hour and then it resets and starts recording again. And I didn't want to do that. So I got to like 58.5 minutes and got out of there. And I thought it was really good. I really enjoyed it. Well, I'm sure we'll be putting some snippets of it out in the future. But yeah, I enjoy those conversations. The Life Fitz podcast is totally different than anything else we do. It's just great conversations with people. Maybe they're a Hall of Fame football coach named Bill Snyder. Last week it was a future Hall of Fame football coach named Chris Kleiman. Next week, I hope it's a future basketball Hall of Fame coach named Jerome Tang. Kind of working on that one. We'll see. But we'll be throwing in some, people that you don't know. There's an LA anchor, TV anchor, that's a K-State graduate named Jeff Vaughn. I've already got him scheduled to do one this summer. So we kind of really explore the space with the Life of Fitz podcast, do all kinds of things.
Yeah, it is an absolutely awesome podcast. You can listen to it anywhere you get your podcasts, Amazon, Spotify, Apple, all those different places. Check it out. It's the Life of Fitz podcast. And this week, as Fitz just mentioned with Bill Snyder, absolutely awesome stuff. So we're talking to Tim Fitzgerald, publisher of GoPowerCat.com. It's the Azure Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up here on 580 Sports Talk. Fitz joining us on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits hotline. Did want to get to some major basketball transfer news that has happened since the last time we got to chat with you, Fitz. Arthur Kaluma, the newest member of the Kansas State Wildcats basketball team. I thought this would have been an awesome fit for anyone. I at one point thought, dang, if Arthur Kaluma wanted to commit to KU, I would have been happy with that. He had interest from Kentucky, which is begging to give away minutes. He had interest from Alabama, and he cancels those visits to commit on site to K-State. How big of a get is that to land the former Creighton Blue Jay, Arthur Kaluma?
Very significant, because I would suspect they popped in the tape of how they played games last year if he wasn't fully familiar with it. And when I look at his highlights from Creighton, he fits what they want to do so perfectly. He loves the open court. He gets to the rim. He can shoot the three at 6'7", 6'8". He's got some weaknesses in this game, but this is a guy that could well end up at the NBA. He came back to work on some stuff, and that includes his, when he puts the ball on the floor and doesn't get to the rim and has to pull up for a shot, his shooting percentage really drops. So he's got some things there, but he gives them a really nice, strong presence that can play at the 3 or 4, and will go really well with what they have. It's a really cool pickup. They've done a great job in the portal, but two guys they did get out of the portal are both high-profile, tremendous fits for their system, and they simply know what they're looking for, and they go get it.
Tim Fitzgerald at GoPowerCat.com is our guest. This is the Azura Credit Union Wildcat Wrap-Up on 580 Sports Talk. Fitz joins us here on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline every Wednesday at this time to break down all things K-State. You can find him and his staff's great work at GoPowerCat.com. Check him out on Twitter at LifeOfFitz. With the Kaluma commitment, do you think the Wildcats are largely done in the transfer portal, or do you think that there might be another addition or two yet still to come?
Yeah, they've got two that they could give. They might keep them. I'm reminded that they played with, they had a full scholarship load last year, but they had 3 or 4 red shirts. So they played with more guys than the 11th, or fewer guys than they have for their 11 next year. I think they still want another guard, someone that can really handle the point, to slide people off the ball. They're more combo guards, but they also might be content with this. They don't want to just add a body to add a body. They want to find someone that'll both fit as a player and a personality into this locker room, because that is so important for them. They just don't look at guys. I can't tell you how many times I get a DM or someone tweets at me, "Is this guy a good fit?" Well, I don't know what kind of guy he is. I'm looking at him, his stats, and see some highlights, and yeah, he can play, but does he fit into the locker room? And that's really the question everything comes back to. Does it make this a better program overall, not just more points?
So if Kansas State goes into November and they roll out a starting 5 of Tyler Perry, Cam Carter, Arthur Kaluma, Naquan Tomlin, and let's say David Gasson at the 5, because that's what it looks like on paper right now. What is the ceiling for that group? Do you feel like that's a group that can once again be in the Big 12 title mix, or do you feel like that might be a tier below as a team that's still solidly an NCAA tournament team, but maybe out of the mix of contending for the league?
They had such a high upper end or high top end with 2 all Big 12 players, which is rare. If you're not Kansas, that doesn't happen very often in this conference. And I don't think they'll have that, but I think they have more stuff, more pieces, more guys that can contribute in a better way. I think all 3 freshmen coming in have a capability of contributing. I think their red shirts coming out all have an opportunity to contribute. I've heard great things about Taj Manning. Maybe they feel like Gerald Colbert is going to end up giving them the kind of low post defender, shot blocker that can run the floor that they were originally looking for in the portal. I got to admit, I saw a photo of him from the Topeka event, and he has really leaned out and trimmed down. Looks like he's gotten rid of some baby fat. So maybe he does fit what they want. But again, I think one more piece would make me feel a little bit more comfortable in terms of leadership in that backcourt. I know Jerome Tang wanted 2 experienced guards out of the portal. He at least gotten 1. So I imagine if they can find the right guy, they will snap him up.
We're chatting with Tim Fitzgerald, the publisher of GoPowerCat.com, part of the 24/7 Sports Network. You can find him on Twitter at LifeOfFitz, and of course, you can find his work and the work of his great crew over at GoPowerCat.com. It's the Azura Credit Union Wildcat Wrap-Up here on 580 Sports Talk. I wanted to flip over to football for a little bit, Fitz. Dan and I were talking about the K-State football roster, a little compare and contrast with KU as we get closer and closer to the start of fall camp. When you look at this K-State football roster going into the year, is there a position that stands out to you where maybe there are a lot of question marks, but there's also a really high ceiling? Like, I think that both in the secondary you got to replace Julius Brents and Josh Hayes. That's not easy to do, but there's plenty returning, and there's a lot of high potential there. And I look at wide receiver, too, where you've got multiple Power 5 transfers, guys who maybe didn't have huge impacts at their other schools, but certainly could become major players in this K-State offense. What position would you look to that has question marks, but also a sky-high ceiling?
Nose tackle.
Okay.
Uso at nose tackle has shown some flashes of being really good, but he has to get weight off to play the amount of snaps they need at that position. They're still kind of sniffing around the transfer portal to see if anything pops up. Anyone looking for a new home. But they're a little thin there on experience to the point where I'm a little uncomfortable with it. And it's not like it's a position you can just flip anyone into. You got to have the right guy, you got to be a big dude to play nose tackle on a 3-man front, or at least extremely strong and fast, which they also use. So that is kind of my position of concern. But I think this too is a Big 12 title contending 2019. We just discussed this on our podcast that will go up live in the morning. This team could really set itself up. This program could set itself up by getting back to the Big 12 championship, let alone winning back-to-back ones, right when this conference needs an alpha football program. They could put K-State in a position to be that program as, Texas and Oklahoma leave. Oklahoma was the alpha for years. Texas was alpha in recruiting, but not necessarily getting over the hump. So, it's going to be wide open in a year who's going to take over this conference. And this is a really important year for programs that are staying in the Big 12 or joining the Big 12 to kind of make their presence felt as they head into the new conference.
Speaking of the realignment news and notes, it feels like for almost a year now, Fitz, we've gotten a lot of from national outlets, mostly a lot of, well, this could happen, or these entities are talking, or these are the targets now. We are just actually waiting for something to happen. We are waiting for the other shoe to drop, so to speak. And I feel like I've asked you some version of this question about 100 times at this point, but are you getting the sense that we are at a point where all the ducks are in a row, so to speak, and we just need that? I'm going to use so many cliches here. We just need that shoe to drop, and then we will actually have some change on the landscape?
The whole thing has been hinging on the Pac-12 media deal. I get a real kick out of the Pac-12 people who claim, you guys have been wrong about every time about expansion. No, what's been wrong is the timetable that the Pac-12 keeps. We're going to have a deal in a week, in a month, by April 15th. Remember that one? Then it was June 1, just not too long ago. Now they're like, maybe by the end of the month. Well, now we're seeing schools completely guessing on financial numbers for future budgets on their campus because they don't have numbers from a media deal beyond next year. And they're trying to make budget projections into the future without having any clue if they will have $30 million in media revenue, which I think would be the high end for them, or, if the conference falls apart, 5, 10. Those are huge differences. This is getting to the point of urgency for the Pac-12 because members are getting fed up. They have had the can kicked down the road repeatedly. They're trying to be patient. They want the Pac-12 to survive. I think we all want the Pac-12 to survive and the ACC to survive. We don't want to see them make it happen. And I find it entertaining that now they're saying, well, if Colorado leaves, we're just going to grab San Diego State. I'm like, I thought San Diego State was supposed to replace USC or UCLA in Southern California. I mean, you've got 2 openings already. That'd be a 3rd opening. And, you're replacing with 1 school. I got news. If the Pac-12 starts to come apart, San Diego State is joining the Big 12 if they can. I mean, they're no dummies. They're not going to join a conference that will fall apart on them and give them 1 decent year of payout before they're back to Mountain West money. I think the Big 12's had enough. Pac-12 schools have had enough. I know San Diego State has a hard deadline. End of June, you got to make a decision. And I think it'll eventually break. I hope so. I love talking expansion realignment, but I am tired of it. Mostly because the Pac-12 people have just been insufferable. They act like they're not doing anything here. They're just being attacked from the outside when these problems are all self-inflicted or inflicted by the Big Ten taking 2 big brands.
For all the best coverage of realignment, of K-State basketball, K-State football, make sure you're checking out GoPowerCat.com. That is where Tim Fitzgerald is the publisher. They're part of the 24/7 Sports Network. You can find Fitz as well on Twitter @LifeOfFitz, and he joins us every Wednesday, bottom of the 4 o'clock hour for our Azure Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up. Fitz, we appreciate the time. As always, we're thinking about you as you are continuing to fight. We're following along with the progress of Fighting Fitz. I know a lot of people ask about you on our text line all the time and are thinking about you. So are we, and we will talk to you soon, my friend.
I keep making those trips to Topeka, and they turn out good for my medical news, so that's awesome.
That's what we love to hear. We'll talk to you soon, man.
Thank you, boys.
That is Tim Fitzgerald from GoPowerCat.com on the Fleming Place Wine and Spirits Hotline, our Azure Credit Union Wildcat wrap-up. I hope it happens soon. I agree. It's fun to talk about. It was a lot of fun to talk about. Now it's been too long.
Yeah, it's time for something to shake.
Let's figure it out. We are going to figure out what's coming up in the 5 o'clock hour during this news segment. Just kidding. We are going to come back after the national news. We've got our headlines, we've got a Royals preview, and another little note about KU football recruiting. That big week continues. That's next hour on 580 Sports Talk.
Time is
1 hour left on this Wednesday edition of 580 Sports Talk. Thanks so much for being a part of it with us. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. He's Dan Lucero. We're here with you until 6. Then we've got some 580 Sports Talk overtime when we'll hear from Kellis Robinette of the Wichita Eagle. And then we will send it to the Royals Radio Network for Royals-Reds, the final game of their 3-game set tonight.
Royals trying to avoid a 9th straight loss.
If they lose, it will be the 7th time since 2018 that they have a 9-game losing streak.
7th time in not 7 years.
Yeah.
That
That's
they've
pretty
had
bad.
a losing streak that long. Oh, man.
As awful as last year was, their longest losing streak was 6 games, which is bad. It's not like a good thing, but it's not 9 or longer. They have also had 10 and 11 game losing streaks in that same period of time. This sucks, man.
Yeah, I've seen some folks say on Twitter that this is the worst Royals season they can recall. Like, I mean,
yeah.
How many times are we gonna have to quote Buddy Bell, right? You
Right.
never say it can't get worse.
Well, what's the worst winning number of losses?
106.
106.
2006, I think.
Yeah. 2005. They lost 106 games, 56 and 106. They're currently on pace for 119. Technically, 3 different guys managed games that year. Can you name the 3?
In 2005,
Yeah.
Tony Pena.
Uh-huh. You just mentioned him.
Buddy Bell.
Buddy Bell.
This 2005?
2005.
Okay, yeah, Buddy Bell was after Tony Pena, wasn't he?
After
Tony Muser? No.
Bob Schaefer.
Yeah, I wasn't getting that in a million years.
17 games of Bob Schaefer, who managed the Royals for a grand total of 18 games in his career. 1 game in 1991 and 17 games in 2005. I did not know that. I'm going to be honest with you.
That is an extremely baseball manager name.
Bob Schaefer. Yeah. Big time. Big time. He shares birthday with my sister. How about that? May 22nd. One of my favorite pages on Baseball Reference is the managerial stats pages. Like, we have the number of intentional walks he called for, how many times his team stole third. Great stuff. A lot of 0s and 1s because he coached for 18 games.
I always forget that Buddy Bell was the Royals manager after he was the Rockies manager. So that dude's soul had already seen rivers before he got to Kansas City. That's where the I never say it can't get worse comes from. That man not only managed the Royals, he managed the pre-Humidor Mike Hampton and Denny Nagel Colorado Rockies.
You just hated good baseball. Just didn't enjoy. Like, by the end of that, you got to think, damn, I don't really like this anymore.
Yeah, like this sport that literally 3 generations of my family have played professionally. Maybe it's bad.
It's definitely bad at that point. We have a request from Christopher in the YouTube comment section. YouTube channel, by the way, is called Sports on 580 WIBW. Go subscribe if you haven't already. And you can watch the video version of the show if you go to YouTube as well.
Yeah.
See our handsome faces. Well, handsome. Maybe a stretch on one of these at least.
Our wives think we're handsome.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Our mothers probably think we're handsome.
Yeah, that's true too. Christopher says, Jake and Fulton pledged a Royals free mic'd up tomorrow if they lose tonight. We were also informed of that in between shows today when we were doing the hot change at 3:00.
Yeah, they hashed that out.
Jake said if the Royals lose, we will not say a word about them. Royals off day, we get an off day from the Royals. We will not talk about them. I am going to be upfront with you. I will talk about the Royals tomorrow. Dan is not going to be here.
Yeah, it's just you.
Dan is going on vacation for the next week.
I am getting on an airplane tomorrow.
And going to somewhere, well, it's actually extremely warm here, but beachier.
West Florida. We're going to the Tampa area.
Yeah. Ooh, the Gulf. Nice warm water.
We're going there for there's a family friend of my wife's side who's getting married. We're going to go to the wedding, and then we're going to enjoy some beach time.
Did you end up getting tickets to a Rays game?
We are going to go.
Nice.
We're going to wait out the secondary market. Little pricier than I anticipated.
Really?
But then again, the Rays are good.
Yeah.
$25 a pop is the get in.
Remember when they were good a few years ago and Evan Longoria was like, wow, it'd be cool if anyone ever came and watched us. And people got mad.
Yeah.
And, dude, he's been here for 10 years. Don't get mad at him. He's right.
So we're staying within, it's like, we're like 20 minutes from the ballpark. So I looked that up and I was like, hey, we should go to a baseball game while we're here. And my wife kind of hemmed and hawed. And I said, they play indoors. It'll be air conditioned. And then Abby was in.
Sold.
All in.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So yeah, we'll go to a ball game. The Orioles are in town.
Oh, nice.
So we'll see the Rays and the O's
Nice.
on next Tuesday night. And then, of course, who comes to town right after the Orioles? The Royals.
Got out of there
So,
just in time.
Just in time.
Just in time.
Just barely missed having to think about the Kansas City Royals.
So Dan is going to be off tomorrow through next Wednesday. We have an off day in there, too. We're going to be off on Monday. No show that day for the Juneteenth holiday. So it'll just be me with an assist, text line and YouTube comments with your favorite WIBW part-timer. Kyle Manthe will be in the building for a week as well.
Old Gabby.
So Kyle and I will be holding down the fort, God, for the next few days. My
Can't
promise,
shut him up, man.
my promise to you, we will talk Royals. I will get Kyle to talk about the Royals. Kyle, I don't think has ever participated in What Is Wrong With You.
Oh, that'll be fun for him.
I don't remember if he did last year while you were out on your honeymoon. I do not recall. I'll have to go back and check the tape, do a little film study on that. But Kyle will be in with us, and we will talk Royals baseball. So Christopher and the rest of you Royals diehards,
Boy, just don't get him started. You might not get the forum back.
might not stop.
Yeah.
So that is coming up tomorrow on 580 Sports Talk. Before we get there, though, we've got an edition of 580 Sports Talk headlines on this Flag Day 2023 of June 14th of this year. First headline for me, speaking of the Royals, it broke about 15 minutes into our opening segment of the show today. Vinny Pasquantino done for the season. This sucks. There's really no other way to put it. This absolutely blows. According to the Royals on Twitter today, infielder Vinny Pasquantino is expected to miss the remainder of the season as he will require surgery to repair a torn labrum in his right shoulder. We already knew this is the same injury he had a year ago. He hasn't been right for a while. He's really been slumping. I wonder if this really did play into it. Obviously painful enough that he wasn't able to play, had to go on the IL earlier this week, and now he is done for the season. The silver lining, as we talked about in the opening hour today, is that maybe this is, if it's the same injury exactly that he had last year, get it cleaned up, get it fixed. This is a lost year anyway. All you're playing for is not having the worst year in franchise history. Get him fully healthy so that starting off late March of 2024, early April of 2024, he is good to go and good to play a full season and can get back to the Vinny that we saw for the first month and a half plus of this year. But by the same token, you lose your best player in a year that has been, or best or second best. Salvi's had a good year. But you lose your best or second best player in a year that's already sucked and been really hard to find the positives. I feel for you, Royals fans, because this is a bummer. And I feel for Vinny, too, because he wants to be out there.
Oh, for sure. A month ago, almost exactly. Yeah, I mean, you go back to, you call it a month worth, last 23 games for Pasquantino. He was batting 167 with a 505 OPS, like clearly.
Mhm.
And he went into that hitting 290 with an OPS near 900. So, like, clearly there was something going on. And if you watch his at bats, he wasn't driving the ball. He wasn't hitting it hard. He wasn't hitting it in the air like he usually does. And you just hope that there's a long-term solution that comes with this surgery. This is the kind of thing that is a one shot, get it fixed,
Mhm.
get it right, and get him back in the lineup and get him back mashing because
that's fun.
Yes.
It's awesome to watch him crush balls.
yeah, he's a really good hitter. He's a smart hitter. He's a patient hitter, and he can hit to all fields, and he can hit for power. And he's a fun guy to root
Mhm.
for. Seems like
yeah.
a really likable guy, presence in that clubhouse. And just wish him a full recovery because it doesn't sound like it's going to be a speedy one, unfortunately. But just more bad news and a season full of it.
By the way, real quick before we move on, one other Royals note. We were talking about Buddy Bell, who managed some horrible Royals teams. He managed some bad Rockies teams as well. And Christopher points out, do you know who managed the 1996 Detroit Tigers, who went 53-109?
Oh, no.
Buddy Bell.
Why did he keep getting hired?
He then got fired a few years after that when his team was 52-85. In his career, Buddy Bell, managed 3 different teams for parts of 3 seasons. 3 years with the Tigers, 3 years with the Rockies, 3 years with the Royals. He had a career winning percentage of .418. 9 years, 519 wins, 724 losses. He was also ejected 42 times.
We should say this, too, to be fair to Buddy Bell. He was a hell of a player.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely a good player.
5-time All-Star, 6-time Gold Glover, Silver Slugger Award winner. He's an All-Star as a 21-year-old for the Cleveland Ball Club in 1973.
Mm-hmm.
Like, really good player. 2,500 hits.
Yeah.
1,100 RBI. Like, good player. And his dad played in the bigs. His kids played in the bigs. Like, the Bells are one of the great baseball families. Managing was not his thing, clearly. Although, let's be real honest, who was going to win a bunch of games with the mid-90s Tigers, the early 2000s Rockies, and the late 2000s Royals? You could have brought John McGraw back from the dead. And that's the second time in 2 days I've used that analogy, but still, it holds.
It was fairly recently, like within the last couple of years, that I learned that he and Tim McGraw are related. Did you know that?
John and Tim? That I did not know. I know that
I'm almost certain.
He is Tug's son.
Tug McGraw. Maybe that's who I'm thinking of.
So
I'm
Tug
Tug
McGraw was obviously, well, for people who don't know, but people of a certain vintage will remember, he was a reliever on the Phillies, the Gotta Believe Phillies, 1980. Pitched for the Mets for a long time, left-handed reliever. Had a spring training fling one year, and the product of that was Tim McGraw.
Okay, it was Tug McGraw I was thinking of, not John McGraw.
Yeah, they did not. And Tug died young. He passed. I think he was a brain tumor, but he did not realize until like Tim was an adult that Tim was his son. But that was a kind of unfortunate thing. In some ways, but no, they. I forget who I was reading. I was reading something recently that was the story that. Man, I got this kid. He's pretty good musician.
Yeah, just decent.
Yeah,
decently famous.
And then he got even bigger.
Yeah, no kidding.
So Tim and Tug. John, you got to go way back for.
Yeah, he's much older.
Yes.
Yeah, that mental lapse on my part.
That's all good. No.
Not quite. Don Larson
and Doc Ellis getting those. Not me saying Hideki Matsui was gonna finish top 20 at the Masters either. It's live radio, man.
Hideki Matsui. That was very funny.
It was super funny.
It was very funny.
All right. First headline for me today. KSHSAA announcing the state basketball sites for 2024. And it is notable in the sense that one of the more closely proximate state tournament sites to us will not be a host in 2024. The 2024 state tournaments coincide with the final week of the Big 12 basketball schedule. So Manhattan and Bramlage Coliseum removed itself from consideration as a host. They typically host 2A. This is not the first time this has happened, even in recent memory, but the 2A tournament will not be in Manhattan this year. Dodge City, which has hosted 1A Division I the last couple of years, will instead host the Class 2A state tournament in 2024. Filling the void in Class 1A Division I, the city of Colby, which has never before hosted state tournament basketball, but will host at the newly constructed Colby Event Center, which opened just 2 years ago. All of the other sites remain the same. 6A's in Wichita, 5A's in Emporia, 4A Salina, 3A Hutchinson, and 1A Division II will be in Great Bend.
I do not say this as a criticism of our city or of the event center, but friend of ours, the Stormontville Event Center. Nothing against them. Nothing specifically against KSHSAA either. Put the state tournament back in the capital. Figure it out.
Yeah, I would really like to see state basketball return to Topeka and the Stormont Vale Event Center. I have no insider knowledge as to what the bidding process is or what the event center's interest even is, publicly or privately, in having the state tournament return. But it was really cool when it was at the Expo Center. And I think it would be really great at the Stormont Vale Event Center. And I do hope it returns someday. I understand why it left. I hope that someday it returns.
This is not a shot at Colby either. I know you were out there when they opened the new building.
Yeah,
Super nice.
And it's great. And they've got enough hotels out there. They're going to do great. They're going to host an awesome event.
And I'm sure they do a great job at Barton County Community College.
They do.
I'm sure
they really do.
I'm sure United Wireless Arena is nice. Never been to Dodge City personally. This is the capital. You've got a building where you can host it and you can have a bunch of people and people will come. And there's 2A schools all over, but you can make that drive. It's maddening to me that the biggest event of that season, I would argue the biggest event of the year in high school sports, is the state basketball tournament. And it doesn't come to the capital city. It shouldn't be like that.
Yeah, I would really like to see it come back. And I don't know. Again, we're not pointing fingers or just pounding the table or anything like that. I think that I speak for you. I can tell that I speak for you. And it's a great event. It's a capstone event on the high school sports calendar. And Topeka did a great job hosting it in the past. And I think would again in the future. And I hope that opportunity comes.
I really hope so, too. Absolutely hope so. Next headline for me, until the Vinny news, I was going to lead with this today. If you remember, a couple of months ago now, we found out about a new Netflix series that was coming out called The Quarterback, featuring Patrick Mahomes, Kirk Cousins, and Marcus Mariota. It's essentially a one-year trip through the 2022 NFL season following these three quarterbacks. You've got a guy who's effectively a journeyman at this point, Marcus Mariota, kind of a fall from grace, number 2 overall pick, few good years as a starter in Tennessee, a lot of injuries. Now he's just a journeyman backup. The epitome of the good enough to win you plenty of games, not good enough to ever win you anything meaningful quarterback in Kirk Cousins. And then maybe one day the greatest quarterback of all time in Patrick Mahomes. And you get to experience all of this and see what it was like and what they were like away from the field and in the locker room and on the field and all this stuff. Looks really cool. We found out today this is going to be released on Netflix on July 12th. I don't know if that's just the first episode or episodes, or if that is going to be the full show dropping at once. Maybe you saw confirmation about that. I don't know. But at the very least, the debut of The Quarterback will be July 12th, coming out on Netflix. And if you would like, you can go and check out the trailer of that. It's on YouTube. How perfect. Open up another tab while our show is open on YouTube and then watch the trailer and then come back to our show. But you can watch it on YouTube. It's all over social media. It looks awesome. I mean, they got great access. Netflix, for as many problems as they have with creating some of their own shows that are like, okay, did you really need to make the 18th version of the same kind of plot? They've done a great job with the sports biographies and the sports docu-series recently. This looks awesome. I'm excited to watch it.
Yeah, some of the on-field audio they've got is never before heard stuff from Mahomes and Cousins and Mariota. I'm looking forward to that, and looking forward to seeing some off-the-field stuff. I mean, for Chiefs fans, absolutely, this will be can't miss content. If you're a Chiefs fan, if you're a Mahomes fan, 100%. It does. It looks like it's really good. Obviously, NFL films, they don't do anything halfway. So if they're involved, it's going to be really good. I hope that somebody puts it on the internet illegally so that I may pirate it, because I no longer have Netflix access, because Netflix decided, because I don't live in a house with my mom and dad, I cannot share Netflix access with my mom and dad. So kiss my ass, Netflix. I'm not giving you any money. Go to hell.
I was going to say, because we don't have it right now, but we'll cycle through and get back to it when this is released, and I'll watch it, and I would give you my password, but I guess I can't do that. So
no,
never mind.
You can't do that.
Sorry.
Either. And I mean, that's one thing. If Netflix want to crack down on that, okay, I get it. There's only one per household. Households do not mean that everybody lives under the same roof. Sometimes families live apart. We're not trying to game the system here.
Did the Netflix execs never hear the song Boat Rich by Dads? I'm finally finding home doesn't have an address. Come on.
Not trying to game the system here, just trying to share in, and like this is how it works. Like I pay for Disney Plus that my mom uses, and my brother has paid for HBO Max that I have used. I guess it's just Max, the home for HBO now.
The one to watch.
The one to watch for HBO. Yeah. But we can't do the same for Netflix because they can't make good enough shows and they're hemorrhaging money because people aren't signing up for their crappy product because they don't got friends anymore. So now they're not essential. And go to hell, Netflix. I mean that from the heart.
Anyway, if you are a Netflix subscriber, July 12th, the quarterback, Mahomes, Cousins, Mariota.
And if you are a Netflix subscriber and would like to hold a phone or camera in front of your television while you watch the quarterback and record it, I would be grateful if you would send it my way.
Like that Oklahoma Army football game
Yes.
that was on pay-per-view a few years ago.
Let me know when you are streaming the quarterback on Twitch.
And I will watch.
And whether or not you are showing feet.
That is an all-time great sports on the internet moment.
It really is.
This random guy in his living room streaming on what used to be Twitter streaming, Periscope, from his phone, the Oklahoma Army pay-per-view game. And by the end, Army played a great game. They almost won that game. And it's getting late. And he's like, man, I'm going to keep taping, but I hope this ends soon. I got to go to the bathroom. He's doing the potty dance, standing up. He's showing his feet at some point.
That's how I watched that one Texas KU football game that was on the Longhorn Network a couple years back.
Yeah, that was also a great game.
Les and the Jayhawks almost beat Texas. Iconic moments in sports internet, no question. Next headline for me, the third major of the professional golf season opens tomorrow at the Los Angeles Country Club. The U.S. Open will get underway. Obviously, a lot happening in the golf world. Many golfers have had many things to say about the proposed combination of assets between the PGA Tour, the DP World Tour, and the Saudi Arabia Public Investment Fund. Not all of it flattering. One of the driving forces behind that agreement is not going to be at the U.S. Open. PGA Tour Commissioner Jay Monahan is recovering from an undisclosed medical situation, according to a joint statement from Monahan and the PGA Tour Policy Board. The board fully supports Jay and appreciates everyone respecting his privacy. The statement reads, Chief Operating Officer Ron Price and Executive Vice President and President Tyler Dennis will take over the day-to-day operations of the PGA Tour. Anytime you hear about somebody entering into business with the Saudis and then they have a medical issue, you kind of raise an eyebrow, perhaps.
I also raised an eyebrow that this dude has been under fire for a week now, and I can't be there, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sick.
Could be some of that too. Your betting favorites from our pals at FanDuel. Scotty Scheffler is the Vegas favorite at plus 600. John Rahm plus 900. Brooks Koepka, the PGA champion, plus 1100. Rory McIlroy plus 1200.
Look, I'm not participating in the U.S. Open, but last night I played 2 rounds of Mario Golf on the Switch and had 3 holes in 1.
Wow, that's not too shabby.
I would watch that. You put that on the Golf Channel, I will watch someone play Mario Golf.
Los Angeles Country Club is a funky little course. It will have both the shortest and longest par 3s on the entire tour schedule this year. They will have a par 3 that will play as like a lob wedge, like 80 yards to the front of the green, and they also have a 290-yard par.
Okay, it was I couldn't remember if it was 240 or 290. Yeah, I saw that.
That par 3 may play longer. I think that's 9. It's going to play longer than 8, which is a par 4 on some days this week. So it's a funky little course. There's lots of strategy you have to think your way through. It's going to be fun if you are into golf. I do think Scheffler's going to win because his short game is so good. And this is such a short, kind of funky course that I feel like your short game's really going to matter.
Yeah.
Scheffler's short game is so good, it won't matter that he can't make a putt. He was dead last in the field at the Memorial in putting.
Tough.
Still finishing in the top 10 because he hasn't finished lower than top 12 in a tournament all year.
Wow.
Like he's on a heater. And all he has to do is, like, if he putts average, he wins this thing by 4 strokes.
Wow.
So Scheffler plus 600 would be my betting play. If you were looking for something of a fun play for a top 10, I think Jordan Spieth plus 210. I think his game fits the course really well. And I'll give you a top 20 play too. This is the first time LA Country Club's ever hosted the US Open, so not a lot of guys know this course.
Mhm.
It's not part of regular rotation. Not a lot of guys who've played it. One guy who has played it, he's an LA guy, Sahith Theegala, plus 260 to finish in the top 20. I like that a lot.
Okay, we'll keep that in mind. Final headline for me. Should we queue up Jim Mora one final time?
One more time for this time of the year. It is
Playoffs?
The playoff roundup.
it's a somber edition.
Playoffs?
It is the final one. The NBA Finals, they were determined earlier this week. You may have heard the Denver Nuggets are your new NBA champions.
That did happen.
Last night, in blowout to the point of boring fashion, the Vegas Golden Knights slaughtered the Florida Panthers 9-3. I walked out of the room to shower. I came back and like 4 goals had been scored. I don't shower for all that long. What the hell? What's going on in this game? Then I go back into the bathroom to brush my hair out. 2 more goals had been scored. It was like an all-star game. They just didn't play any defense, and Vegas annihilated them. That was the most goals scored in a Stanley Cup clinching game since the Seattle Metropolitans beat the Montreal Canadiens in 1917. That's a long time. 106 years.
Certainly is. First cup, obviously, in Vegas Golden Knights history, which is all of 6 years long.
Yeah.
Look,
Let it out.
part of following sports, and even as you know, if you're not a fan of a team, but your team has long been eliminated, as certainly was the case for my favorite NHL team this year, lost in the first round of these playoffs. But the crowning of a champion is supposed to be like symbolic of something, whether it's, maybe it's an ongoing dynasty or it snaps a long championship drought. There's something satisfying because you have the arc of the team and how it came together and the playoff pain it had to go through to get there, and maybe years and years of suffering, maybe 56 years, just to throw one such example out there of a team who had a 56-year championship drought in a different sport snapped earlier this week. And it means something and it resonates and it's significant. So even if that is not your team, you see the celebration of the players and you see the celebration of the fans and you think, man, that means something. This Stanley Cup means absolutely dog crap. It means nothing. It means absolutely zilch in the history of the NHL. It means the same thing that the Diamondbacks winning the World Series in 2001 meant. Nothing. There's no arc for the Vegas Golden Knights. They took advantage of some very lenient expansion draft restrictions and really took advantage of the long-term injured reserve so they could stash a bunch of good players on IR all year while they got healthy and boost their roster that way. They gamed the system and they won a cup in 6 years.
I will counter your point about the Diamondbacks for one reason, and that is just who they played and beating, like, the moment where you got the game-winning, series-winning run off of Mariano Rivera. Like, that is a moment.
Sure.
And I don't have the hockey historical understanding to talk about, well, this series did or didn't have those moments. But it didn't feel like it, though.
It was a 5-game series, and they beat the Florida Panthers, maybe the most nondescript NHL franchise. And I mean, they've only been around
American sports franchise.
Yeah, no kidding. And they've only been around since '93. They don't have much history either. So there's just nothing about this that resonates. Like you look at the pictures of the Golden Knights celebrating with the Stanley Cup, and you feel nothing. Like you feel nothing. Like they were put together by a group that gamed the system to their advantage with the long-term injured reserve, and they got their cup, and good for them. But did you hear when they're doing their victory parade?
Yeah, Saturday night at 7:30 on the Strip.
Tell me your sports franchise is strictly a tourist attraction without telling me that your sports franchise is strictly a tourist attraction. This team doesn't matter.
I saw someone.
They're on a marquee, like they're just doing a long-term. It's like the NHL's doing a long-term residency in Las Vegas, like Cher or David Copperfield.
I saw someone say that the reason they're doing it that late on Saturday is because they're doing something to prepare for the F1 race in Vegas. Like, that makes it worse. So they're just second fiddle to something that's there for 1 week a year or one weekend a year.
I will say this, though, as much as I worry about our guy Fulton Caster's mental health, I don't know how or why he glommed onto the Golden Knights bandwagon, but he's pot committed.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he enjoyed that very much last night. So I'm glad it happened for him.
Jonathan Marchessault was pretty incredible in this series. He had a point in every game. That was pretty impressive.
I don't know who that is.
He won the Conn Smythe.
I know.
Okay. Well, all right. Fair. All right. Owned. Fair enough. Fair point. Point made. That does it for our 580 Sports Talk headlines. By the way, Vance on YouTube says, don't worry, the Raiders will keep Vegas miserable for a long time.
You assume people in hot Milwaukee care about sports. They don't.
Coming up on the other side of this break, a quick note on some more big KU football recruiting news. Plus, we'll get to our Royals preview for tonight against the Reds. Coming up this hour on 580 Sports Talk.
Morning.
We don't touch on a ton of recruiting inertia on the show. Like, we'll talk about the big commitments, obviously, because that's something happened. Someone's coming. I don't get too deep into the, like, oh, well, someone is rumored to be canceling a visit, or, ooh, they're coming this week instead of that week, and other schools are also in on them. Because a lot of that is nonsense, to be frank. And that's not to slight, like, our guys at Fog.net or Go PowerCat, like the guys who follow that. I mean, that's their job. But you're following the whims of 17-year-olds and sometimes helicopter parents. Like, that's hard to follow. And a lot of times it results in not knowing at all what's going on, or like in kids that change schools 4 times in 4 years. Like, it's just hard to follow all that. However, I did want to note, to follow up on what we talked about yesterday with Michael Swain from Fog.net about how much momentum KU has in the recruiting trail. Nothing is official yet, but there has been some whispers today. There have been whispers today that KU is in the midst of stealing a recruit from Iowa, a defensive player from Iowa, a defensive back who was a heavy Iowa lean. You know how hard it is to tell someone, hey, you know that school that turns all of their cornerbacks into NFL players? What if you came here where our defense is bad instead of there? That would be significant. There's another kid in Big Ten country, too, by the way. He's from Michigan. Name's Jalen Todd, if you want to look into it a little bit more. That's a big deal. And I think grand scheme of things, KU has been hard to recruit to for 15 years because the program has sucked, frankly. K-State has always kind of had the reputation that they've got to win on the margins and they've got to win zagging while everyone else is zigging because it's Manhattan and it's hard to recruit to and kids don't want to go to small towns, et cetera, et cetera. Look at the talent K-State has brought in recent years. Look at the talent KU is expecting to bring in their next 2 recruiting classes. Like, this feels different. This just feels different for the state. Now, Kansas as a state has actually had some really good football talent the last couple of years too, and in the next couple of years as well. We've talked about some of those players in recent weeks, but it just feels like this is a different couple of recruiting cycles for our local programs in a way that we really haven't. I mean, even in K-State's best days of like Snyder V2 to now, it hasn't felt quite like this with the kind of caliber of players they're bringing in. And KU certainly has not felt like that with the caliber of player they're bringing in. It's just, things just feel different in a very positive way for both programs, in a way that I don't think we'll really kind of grasp for another couple of years with Kansas, because KU is still trying to dig out of the Grand Canyon-sized pit it was in. But it's exciting. Like, this is, I know of a number of people who have told me, like, hey, I never followed football recruiting because I really didn't have any reason to. But now I'm following it, and this is fun because it feels like things are changing.
Yeah, it's real live forward momentum. We've talked about it this week. Michael Swain said it directly when we talked to him yesterday. Momentum is real in recruiting, and KU's got a lot of it, gaining a lot of it. And K-State over the last couple of years, I think, has gained a lot of it. There's still some space between K-State and KU, both in the 24/7 rankings and on the gridiron, but KU's churning their legs to close that gap. And you're right. Like, this won't manifest maybe for a year or two. We got to see it on the field. But there's no denying that it does feel like Kansas and Kansas State are how do I want to phrase this? They are leveling up in terms of the kind of player that they're recruiting, the kinds of recruiting battles they're winning, I think is the way that I want to say it. Like, you get a good player if you like completely sell out on, like, this is the person we want as the crown jewel of our class. This is our number one priority. Like, you give him all your recruiting points if you're on NCAA Football 14, and you can go and get that player, or you can get the legacy, or you can get, you know, the kid who's nearby. You know, K-State certainly has been better than that in recent memory than KU has. But this is going into some other territories and beating back some big offers for kids. Like, Kansas is not winning recruiting battles against like Missouri Valley schools anymore for football players. They're winning recruiting battles against SEC and Big Ten schools. K-State has started to do that in recent years. And that's why, again, they're still a little further along. It's still KU is trying to get to the level that K-State's kind of already been at here through the first couple of years of the Chris Kleiman era. And K-State now is trying to get to the level, as we talked to Tim Fitzgerald about, they've got a notion to be like a torchbearer in the new Big 12. And they should have that notion. They should have the belief that that's possible for them. But both programs are absolutely leveling up. And you can see it when the most glaring part of it, the part that makes it the most obvious is when you look at who else is offering these kids that are choosing to go play at Kansas.
I think it is also, and I'm glad you brought up what Fitz said, and I think this sort of dovetails with that. And I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here when I bring up this point, but look at the two athletic departments at KU and K-State as a whole in recent memory and going forward. Football, K-State they just won the Big 12 and won 10 games and played in the Sugar Bowl, and it looks like they're going to keep that machine going in the near future. KU is getting back to at least a respectable level. Men's basketball, KU is just a year removed from a national 2 years removed from a national championship, is going to be the preseason number 1 this year. K-State is certainly back to respectable and more after an Elite Eight run and a coach who clearly knows what he's doing. Women's basketball, KU just won the women's NIT. K-State's going to be a preseason top 25 team next year. Baseball, K-State got really dang close to the NCAA tournament. KU apparently decided, hey, maybe we should care about this sport now, and got a coach that cares and is involved. They've got other programs that are good and meaningful and make an impact. Like, if you're going to be in an era where, hey, there's an opportunity for someone to be at the top of this league, to take over and say, I am the captain now.
The alpha, as Fitz put it when we talked to him.
KU and K-State are doing their fair share of getting there. It will, if they do not end up in that spot on that perch, it will not be for a lack of trying. And I think Gene Taylor, I think Travis Goff, and I think the universities higher than that deserve a lot of credit for both of those things.
It's exciting. It's exciting to see both athletic departments growing and aspiring to more in sports where they did not always aspire to more.
Yeah, absolutely true. Let's get to a break. We'll preview Royals Reds after this on 580 Sports Talk.
John Farley, co-founder of Kansas Regenerative Medicine Center, knows firsthand how effective stem cell...
Shout out to Edgar Winter, the albino rock star. Royals Reds coming up tonight. 7:10 first pitch, 6:30 pregame. What a segue that was. We've got some 580 Sports Talk overtime with Kellis Robinette of the Wichita Eagle coming up at the top of the 6 o'clock hour before Royals pregame. Ben Lively, no relation to Blake, on the mound for the Reds. Daniel Lynch going for the Royals. The Royals are trying to avoid a 9-game losing streak, what would be their 7th 9-game losing streak since 2018.
It's not that large of a frame of time.
No.
To have this many 9-game losing streaks.
9 games is, for you math heads out there, 5.6% of a major league season. That's a lot. Okay? That's a good number of games.
Yeah.
I hope they win. Royals fans, you've had a tough day. You had to watch the A's surge ahead of you in the major league standings. One of your best players, maybe your best young player, Vinny Pasquantino, who at times early this year looked like he might be an all-star. He is out for the rest of the year. RIP to your bold prediction, by the way, that he'd make the all-star game.
Yeah.
I feel like
Alas.
you get a wash for that one.
Yeah,
though.
I mean, I can't control guys getting hurt. Or not.
Yeah, I feel like you wiped that one off the board.
I am a little more optimistic than I might normally be about a Royals win tonight because I don't think Ben Lively is all that great.
Mhm.
And Daniel Lynch has pitched well in his 3 starts since coming off of the injured list. Has pitched better than his ERA would suggest. He's keeping the ball in the ballpark. He's not walking a lot of guys. He's getting a lot of swings and misses, striking out more than a batter per 9 in his first 16 1/3 innings this year. See if he's got another good start in him. I like the way he pitched against Baltimore last time out. He used a fastball up in the zone.
Mhm.
It's not a great fastball, but if you elevate it,
Yeah.
it plays up. And he knows how to elevate the fastball, pitch down with the breaking stuff and the changeup. I think Lynch has a good outing tonight. I don't know if it will result in anything because obviously, as we talked about, the Royals haven't hit a lick recently. And not having Pasquantino does not help matters, obviously, as well. But I think Lynch has another good outing in him tonight. So maybe this is the night. Maybe the Royals snap it tonight.
Do you remember, like, not even or just over 2 hours ago when you said, well, now one of the things you can do with no Vinny to worry about in the lineup the rest of the year, that's not phrased well, but you know what I mean, is you just put Prado at first, you put Olivares at DH, you put them in the most natural spots you can get for them. Onward we go. Olivares is playing left field tonight. Salvi's DHing.
Well, I mean,
I get it.
Some
but
nights you got to DH Salvi. Like I understand you can't DH Olivares every night, but God, I am not looking forward to watching him in left field
yeah, I can't wait for
because
him.
that's all there is to watch. We're in baseball season, folks.
Yeah,
There's nothing else.
I said that to Abby last night. I said, man, it is tough when a team is this non-competitive when it's the only sport we have locally.
Mm-hmm.
Like, again, I'd love it if we had a WNBA team right now. We'd be talking all about it. Or, like, if a former Chief went and became a star for the Fremantle Dockers, like, we would talk some Australian rules football. Did you know that there is an American who plays and is pretty good?
I did not.
Mason Cox, who was a former basketball walk-on at Oklahoma State.
How about that?
There's a picture that went around on Twitter the other day of him guarding Joel Embiid.
Huh.
You won't believe this, but it did not go well for the walk-on for Oklahoma State.
Hope he's better at scoring tries than he is at scoring hoops.
Sadly, that was the last game that Embiid played. He got hurt after that at KU in a cursed 2013-2014 season. Well, relatively speaking, cursed anyway. Let's get to one final timeout. We'll come back. We'll finish up this edition of 580 Sports Talk with the final word.
The best things in life are simple.
We should point out from our friend Barbara on the YouTube comments, Sporting Kansas City's playing. And they've been hot recently.
Yes, they
They've
have.
been playing very well. Maybe we'll have to spend a little more
Yes,
time
they have.
talking Sporting.
Hopefully, the Kansas City Current can get hot too.
Yeah, that's true too. A lot of soccer going on. All right, final word time.
Final word for me is I'll see you suckers next week. I am going on vacation. I say suckers in jest. I love all of you. I am going on a little bit of a break. I will be back next week. Don't burn the place down while I am gone.
I will do my best. I cannot make any promises. I think Kyle can probably promise that though. He'll keep us in line.
Yeah, he better. You just make sure you keep the reins on him, because man, once he gets his lips flapping, it's just hard to it's hard to shut him up.
Final word for me today. I've said it a number of times, and I will say it one final time. Royals fans, I really feel for you. We cover the team, we follow the team, we know this team intimately. But for those of you who have a true emotional attachment to it, I feel bad. You lose Vinny. You've lost a higher percentage of your games than any other team in baseball this year. Brighter days are ahead. I just don't know when those are going to begin. That does it for 580 Sports Talk today, though. We will talk to Dan coming up next week. He is off on vacation. It'll just be myself and Kyle filling in over the next few weeks. Next few days, I should say, not weeks. Coming up tomorrow on the show, Rick Peterson is going to stop by. We will talk a little Royals baseball. Maybe we'll try to get creative with how to fix that team. We'll talk some KU. We'll talk some K-State. We'll get some Chiefs final minicamp thoughts as well. That's all tomorrow from 3 until 6. For Dan Lucero, I'm Brendan Dworzinski. This is 580 Sports Talk.